Could I have all the board members to the table, please? This March 6, 2014 regular meeting number 15 of the Fairfax County School Board will now come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence, and then the performance of the national anthem by the Fairhill Elementary School Chamber Strings under the direction of Beth Oakes. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. There was a Fairhill Elementary School Chamber Strings. A few announcements before we continue tonight's meeting. If you would like to access tonight's agenda and related meeting documents, you can do so by going to the Fcps website, select School Board, and then Upcoming Meetings and Agendas. The meeting is also being streamed live on the FCPS website homepage. Click on Watch School Board Live. If you have signed up to speak before the board during citizen participation, please turn in 16 copies of your remarks at this time to the deputy clerk sitting in the section to my right. If you would like to review a copy of the agenda and any agenda item that is being discussed tonight, that information is also on the table by the auditorium entrance. Please turn off or silence your cell phone. Let me now call on Ms. Evans for first announcement, to be followed by Mr. Ash for additional announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to read the announcement about Sleep Awareness Week. As a school system, we have a responsibility to do our part to educate the public about the importance of sleep, as well as to set policies for that enable our students to get enough sleep. For those of you who are watching One Issue, we do continue to work on the blueprint for change to accomplish our goal, the school board goal of starting high schools after 8 a.m. to help our teen students. National Sleep Awareness Week, March 2nd to 9th, 2014. National Sleep Awareness Week, which takes place March 2nd to 9th, 2014, is an annual public education and awareness campaign to promote the importance of sleep. Adequate sleep is an integral part of a healthy lifestyle, critical to physical and mental health as well as to learning effectively. It's also important to get enough sleep to reduce sports injuries, accidents, and the dangers of drowsy driving. The National Sleep Foundation suggests that adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night, elementary school-aged children about 10 to 11 hours, and teens 8.5 to 9.25 hours of sleep a night for good health. According to the Virginia Academy of Sleep Medicine, sleep affects how children feel and function. By helping your child to get the recommended amount of sleep, you can improve your child's health, psychological well-being, and safety. Sleep is key to your child's growth and development, as well as her ability to learn.
Mr. Ash.
Thank you. Theater in Our Schools Month is March 2014. The American Alliance for Theater and Education has designated March as Theater in Our Schools Month to celebrate and increase public awareness of the benefits of theater education for youth development. The theme for 2014 is fostering a culture of creativity. Theater education has the power to raise academic achievement and to stimulate innovation and creativity among students. The Alliance encourages citizens to celebrate the positive impact of theater in the classroom and to remember that all students should have access to quality theater education in their lives. March has been officially designated by the National Association for Music Education for the observance of Music in Our Schools Month, the time of the year when music education becomes the focus of schools across the nation. Based on the 2014 theme, Music Makes Me Blank, the month is designed to highlight the importance of comprehensive, sequential music education taught by exemplary music educators for all children, and to remind citizens that the school is where all children should have access to music. It is also an important opportunity for music teachers to bring their music programs to the attention of the school and the community and to display the benefits that school music brings to students of all ages. Art education contributes powerful educational benefits to all elementary and secondary students. Art education develops students' creative problem solving and critical thinking abilities, teaches sensitivity to beauty, order, and other expressive qualities, gives students a deeper understanding of multicultural values and beliefs, and brings to life what students learn in other subjects. The theme for Youth Art Month 2014 is Start with Art, Learn for Life. The Fairfax County School Board believes that support should be given to art teachers as they strengthen art education in schools and communities, and all citizens are urged to take an interest and give full support to the quality school art programs for children and youth. Mr. Chair, if you'll allow it, I'd like to proceed with my announcements
Sure,
about student
please.
matters right now. So students, I know I certainly enjoyed my additional long weekend. Let's see, that must be like the third or fourth one this year. truly extraordinary. But I was right back to work at school yesterday and today. And next week, barring no more snow, the Student Advisory Council will be having one of its final meetings as we prepare our presentation to the school board. And I hope that all of you can make time to attend the presentation, which I think is a really accurate representation of what the students perceive to be facing the county right now. Let's see. As for the three announcements I just read, I think it's March is clearly a month for the arts. And as the son of an art teacher and a performing arts student, I sing and participate in theater. I thoroughly encourage, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that this county has provided for the enrichment, not just in what seems to be an increasingly STEM-focused world, how our county still makes an active effort to make the arts a very clear and defined priority for our students, and working on the whole student and providing opportunities for students who don't necessarily excel or want to excel in STEM, but rather choose the arts. Finally, my thoughts are with the Woodson community facing the recent tragedies, and it's certainly difficult, but it's been impressive to see the outpour of strength and unity coming from that community.
Thank you, Mr. Ash. The next order of business is recognition of 2014 Outstanding Assistant Principal of Virginia, Mr. Stork.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is absolutely my pleasure tonight, on behalf of the school board, to recognize Mr. Sean DeRose, Assistant Principal at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, for being named the 2014 Outstanding Assistant Principal of Virginia by the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals. Mr. DeRose, if you could come down to the lectern, please. They're welcome to join you, of course. And I'm sure there are the reasons that you are doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Well, it is absolutely my pleasure on behalf of the school board to recognize, first and foremost, probably the most important thing about you is that you are a Buckeye. That's where at least that's where Ted and I start from. Is that's an important place to start.
Very important.
But we very appreciative of all your efforts, not only in terms of the work that you did at Stewart and working with Mel Riddle, a former Principal of the Year at Fairfax County Public Schools, but also your work on behalf of the Fairfax Leadership Academy, something that I think we all have been very impressed with and very appreciative of the efforts that have been made to try to bring academic excellence to all of our students, even some of our neediest, maybe our most challenged. So in particular, I want to personally thank you for that. And then also recognize your wife, Mary Kate, and your three children, Claire, Regan, and Jack. And particularly, Mary Kate, you're a teacher at Woodley Hills Elementary School, and I'm very appreciative of that. And the fact that you are Mount Vernon District residents, of course, very thankful for that. So welcome, and just want to read a few more things about the wonderful work you've been doing, and then we'd like to thank you with a picture, and congratulations. Mr. DeRose began his administrative career in 2003 at Stewart High School, again with Mel Riddle, former Principal of the Year for Fairfax County Public Schools, where he served as an assistant principal until 2010, when he became an assistant principal at TJ. He's been working with Evan Glazer, our TJ principal, and Evan has said that Sean extends beyond his comfort zone as a result of building teams of students, teachers, and parents to enable collaboration. He knows how to express care and appreciation for the community so that they feel motivated and get involved. Mr. DeRose will receive the State Association's award at the 87th Annual Conference in June in Williamsburg. As the Virginia winner, he will also then go to the NASSP, which is the National Association of Secondary School Principals, VIRCO, National Assistant Principal of the Year program. Sean is now also one of the candidates for the National Assistant Principal of the Year award. The school board is very pleased to have Mr. DeRose here at FCPS. We congratulate him on his prestigious award and wish him the best of luck. We'd also like to present to you a certificate of recognition from the school board. Mr. DeRose? Any comments before we get up? You're more than welcome to tell us we don't know what we're doing, and
I appreciate it. No, I've worked in I've had the luxury of working in Fairfax County Public Schools, and it's a terrific school system. And having working at two terrific schools and two drastically different experiences, one of the things I guess that was missed is I went from assistant principal to director of student activities at TJ, and then went on to be assistant principal at TJ. And those experiences as an assistant principal at Stewart, my time as director of student activities at TJ, and now as an assistant principal at TJ has been just a tremendous. And I do want to say I've had the opportunity, and some of them are here today, of working with some terrific teachers, teacher leaders, assistant principals from both Stewart and TJ, and the opportunity you mentioned, Dr. Glazer and Mel Riddle, among others, some great, terrific principals I have the opportunity to work with over the years as well, and a very loving and supportive wife.
You better believe that's what it takes.
That's
we all
what it
know that.
takes.
So, thank you all. And if you could all join us, and pretty much all your friends and supporters here, come on down, join us. We're going to get a great picture, a couple great pictures. Thank you.
You guys up front. Can be there. Come on, come on, come on. You're good there. We only see important people up front. Start here.
Congratulations. I'm sure you had a lot to do. Well, I'd like to do dancing portion.
There's one stand here. Come in here. Here, why don't you stand right there? No, I can't. You're the big one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mine together.
Got the certificate.
Oh, yeah.
This is like gold, sort of, somewhere.
Absolutely.
Some alternate.
All right, everybody. And on two. 1, 2. One more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Hey, Evan, good to see you.
What's his name?
You guys ready?
Everybody congratulate Evan. Oh my gosh. You're awake.
I'm sure my file. Just let me start.
Open it up.
Perfect.
Evan said they just had another baby. Evan Glazer at TJ. Evan's a new dad?
Before we say goodbye to, where are you going, Sean? I think your superintendent wants you to stay there so that she can say something to you. Dr. Garza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Sean, I just had to take this opportunity to, again, personally congratulate you. We are very fortunate to have strong leadership all throughout this division, and you're a perfect example of so many
thousands really of wonderful leaders we have throughout the system. So we're very proud of you. We're proud of the work that you're doing, the service to children, your leadership. You're very forward thinking, which is something I appreciate with regard to thinking differently about how we design schools to really respond to students' needs. And I really appreciate and admire that about you. You have a lovely family. And I was telling Sean, the first time I met him, he had the phone right, watching his phone very closely, and they were expecting the Jack any minute. So it's wonderful to see Jack here and your beautiful family. I understand Dr. Glazer back here. Happy to have him here too. Wonderful principal at TJ. And I understand you're a new father. I did not know that. Do what? 2 weeks old. Wow, congratulations. Just again, congratulations. We're very proud of you, and thank you for representing FCPS so well.
Thank you.
Sean,
don't go anywhere yet.
Stay just for one more minute. Mrs. McLaughlin wants to say a few things.
I wanted to speak publicly because I wanted to share with my colleagues and for the visitors here tonight that I have had the good fortune of 2 different areas of getting to hear about your great work and witnessing your great work. The first time was as you're serving as DSA at TJ. I was on the Countywide Turf Task Force, and Sean was very involved and very passionate and did a wonderful job advocating for TJ as we were having the countywide discussion on how we could get synthetic turf fields in our communities and the benefit it would bring, not just to Thomas Jefferson students for physical education and for sports, but for the community in which Thomas Jefferson resides. And so I appreciated the time you were investing in that effort. And the second thing that I wanted to just speak to that I had shared privately with Sean and his wife is that a very dear Fairfax County family that I know was going through a difficult time. And their daughter is at TJ. And Sean really extended himself in the ways that we so hope that our administrators can do. But with the demands on your time, the fact that you went so above and beyond to do the things that help our families know that each and every child matters, you demonstrated that, and it came back to me with words of enormous praise for your professionalism and the work that you did. And so I wanted to publicly convey my appreciation to you for that, and we're very, very fortunate that you're here in our system.
Thank you.
Okay. Finally, we'll let you go. Oh, Mr. Ash.
Of course.
Let's see, Mr. DeRose, where do I begin? I mean, wow. I first met Mr. DeRose, I think the 3rd week of my freshman year. It was the beginning of my student government career as well. Not detention, not that time. No, but Mr. DeRose, it was something having to do with homecoming, and I was freaking out, and it was just some homecoming event, but to us students, that homecoming event was a big deal. And so I was frantically trying to figure out some little detail of something, and I asked him a question. He very calmly replied, gave me the answer to my question, and then we had this fun discussion for the next 5 minutes that really helped me calm down and really helped me get back to the moment of homecoming and enjoy that. So that was my first experience that I remember with him. But then over the past 3 years that I've gotten to know Mr. DeRose, he's been nothing but supportive and just there for the students. I mean, as a director of student activities, his office was quite literally an open door. Rarely would I walk by and see him. Well, I would see him not in his office because he'd be in the hallways. He'd be out with the students trying to figure out how to get us new equipment, supporting students in endeavors. When students found cool contests that required a faculty sponsor, he was right there, always lining up to help. He was always ready. He and his daughters are TJ's #1 fans on the football field. He's just always there in a fantastic way. And I know even though I'm leaving TJ next year, I'm glad he won't be. I'm glad he'll still be there to keep helping the students. So thank you for
Will.
everything, Mr. Gross.
Thank you.
Speaking of performing arts, I heard somebody say.
Okay, we'll go to the action items. We're not going to go to action items. We're not skipping presentation to the school board. Next order of business is a spotlight on learning, STEM and STEAM initiatives in Fairfax County Public Schools. Dr. Garza.
In keeping with the previous presentation, we also have some other wonderful educators and leaders in our system here tonight for a very special presentation. Tonight's spotlight will be presented by Mr. Scott Setter, who is our STEAM resource teacher in the Office of Professional and Life Skills, which falls under, of course, our Instructional Services Department. So the topic of the presentation is STEM, STEAM initiatives, and FCPS. Tonight, he is joined by Ms. Diane Pruner, Acting Coordinator of Career and Technology, Technical Education and IS in the school system. And Diane, how many years were you in the system before you retired? 31. We're just really happy that you're continuing to support and contribute in our system, so happy to have you here. We have Mrs. Rose Moore, who's the coordinator of our K-12 mathematics, and she stays real busy. And then we have two of our wonderful principals and another leader joining us today, and that is we have Kim Retzer here, the principal of South Lakes High School. I think she's joined by Chad, assistant principal Chad Lehman. I haven't met you, Chad, but I look forward to meeting you, who's assistant principal of South Lakes High School. And then Danny Little, of course, who needs no introduction as well. He's the principal of Washington Irving Middle School. I'm very happy to have you all here today. And I get to brag. I even got a sweatshirt with my name on the back, and it glows in the it glows in the dark. So thank you, Danny. So it's all yours.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here today to present to you. Virginia has seen the third highest rate of STEM job growth in the U.S., yet we need to graduate 28% more STEM graduates just to meet the national average. STEM job growth in Virginia is almost double that of non-STEM jobs. We need to provide our students with the skills necessary to compete for these jobs and compete for jobs in a global competitive workforce environment. The STEAM project opens the doors for every student to succeed by promoting collaboration, communication, creativity, and critical thinking skills. The arts are included in STEAM as an important component to help promote divergent and creative thinking processes. With a committee of educators and members of the business community, we have been working through schools throughout the county to promote rigorous, interdisciplinary, and project-based learning opportunities for students. The following video will focus on two projects that are currently ongoing. Let's watch the video.
These Irving Middle School students are working on a STEM project, while these South Lakes High School students work on a STEAM project. To complete their projects, students must understand and apply science, technology, engineering, and math concepts to solve problems. But students working on STEAM projects must also understand and apply artistic thinking to solve problems. Experts believe artistic thinking leads to creative problem solving and innovation.
STEAM and STEM are very important because students are learning the skills that they'll need to be competitive in a 21st century workforce.
STEM and STEAM projects also teach life skills that include collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking.
You could actually put the shower stall in the bath.
Irving's STEM project involves 3 classes, technology, math, and science, that collaborate on a year-long project to build an imaginary Fairfax County neighborhood.
For example, the science class had the watershed activity. Our math class had volume, displacement, surface area, square footage, all of those different types of principles that are covered not only in 7th grade and 8th grade, but also in 6th grade classes as well.
What these students learn in the classroom is reinforced as they work to create neighborhood homes.
Did you guys ever think of doing like a garage or adding any extra things?
Well, later on.
It was definitely a lot of like intertwined. There was a lot of stuff we had to think about once. Like if we put in something over here, it affected all the different classes. And we had to think about like all the numbers, like we couldn't go over a budget in math. And then we had to think about the soil in science. And then that all related back to building the house and all kinds of different stuff.
There was a lot more getting involved in the actual projects, like raising up the walls, building the floor plan, looking at the other stuff in math class, looking at the stuff in science class. It involved so much more than just tech.
Let's start with the base.
Meanwhile, South Lakes High School students are using STEAM subjects to create a public art installation in Reston.
I think one of the coolest parts about this project is the fact that we went through the same process as any professional artist. But it's not just a piece of artwork, it's a piece of engineering, a piece of architecture.
The students conceived and designed their art project, then built a small model. After getting approval from Reston officials, they're now building a larger model. And this spring, they will create their final 13.5-foot tall art project and place it on a high visibility water drain in Reston's Lake Thoreau for the entire community to enjoy.
You're dealing with a pyramid, so you're dealing with mathematics, geometry. You're dealing with science. You have the exterior elements. Matter of fact, the students did a wind test on a structure to see that the plexi panels could withstand high winds in case of a storm. All those things were taken into consideration.
I learned how we use like trigonometry to help figure out like the basis of the dimensions.
STEM and STEAM students see firsthand how their education is crucial to producing projects in real life.
It's been a planning process where they've really had to collaborate together, come up with a solid message, go back and refine that message, just incorporate a lot of skills that professionals in the field really do.
The STEAM project is a collaborative instructional services department project with members representing science, instructional technology integration, CTE, fine arts, and advanced academics. We're also working closely with 2 focus groups. The first focus group is made up of members that are school-based administrators and teachers from throughout the county. The second focus group is made up of business leaders from throughout the community. We work closely with these 2 groups to ensure we are developing programs that will help promote the skills our students need upon graduation. The STEAM project began working with 25 schools representing each of the levels as part of a pilot for this project. Additional schools have contacted us, and we're now working with almost 50 schools since the project has started less than 6 months ago. In addition to the video promoting the great things happening at these schools, the STEAM project team is also working to inspire and engage students through additional opportunities for learning. Through the STEAM project, we're providing professional development opportunities for teachers, including training with outside organizations such as Sci Girls and Engineering is Elementary. We're also conducting Fcps Academy courses to bring teachers together to begin to collaborate from different content areas. As a former classroom teacher, less than a year ago, I know the importance of teacher buy-in to this project. We're working on a 3-tiered approach to promote STEAM within schools. First, we're supporting schools to begin after-school programs such as GEMS, 21st Century Technology Girls, robotics clubs, and Cyber Patriot. Secondly, we're assisting in the development and enrichment of summer camps. Lastly, we're working with schools to develop increased interdisciplinary and project-based learning opportunities with real-world connections for students within our classroom. We're excited about the progress and impact the STEAM project has had on our teachers and our students, and we look forward to continuing to serve more schools and our communities in the future. Thank you.
Yes. If I might just add, again, thank you so much. That was very well done. As we begin to really contemplate our portrait of a graduate and think about engaging, relevant learning, this is a perfect example of where we need to go in all of the classrooms across the division. But you noticed how engaged the students were and how applicable all that rigorous science and technology and engineering and all mathematics, all the different fields, and how they were able to apply those across disciplines. You know, it's so wonderful. I read once upon a time that relevance makes rigor possible, and I think that's so applicable to this particular situation. It was very relevant, but it was also quite rigorous. So I congratulate all of you for your work in moving this important work forward throughout the division.
Thank you, Dr. Garza. I have several board members who want to speak. I have Ms. Hines to be followed by Mrs. Strauss and Mr. Becker.
Okay, thank you. Well, I cannot wait to see that piece of art out in Lake Thoreau because, you know, Reston's beautiful, but those big, ugly cement blocks out in the lakes, I've often thought, we got to do something about them, and here we are doing something. It's wonderful. I'm so excited that the students are doing that. That is perfect. I wanted to follow up a little bit on what Dr. Garza was just talking about. You know, our challenge is to reinvigorate the classroom in just this sort of a way in a climate where we have had to take a lot of standardized tests, and we've got to get kids ready for standardized tests. And I think our challenge as a board is to turn us away from that. And we know that you've been a teacher recently. I'm still working in a building out in Loudoun County. So we had to be very careful to take something off the plate before we put new things on the plate. So I just wondered, for the experience you've had so far, how has that balance been achieved, you know?
We're being very careful and working from a grassroots perspective. And we really want the teachers to buy in and feel that this is something that's beneficial to them and to their students. That's why we're starting with after-school programs to begin the engagement, not only for the students, but also for the teachers, and see how it connects to their content that they're teaching during the traditional school day. And also the same with the summer camps. And then hopefully it will start to begin to trickle into the traditional school day. Exactly what you said is a lot of the feedback I'm receiving from administrators and teachers that we're working with is this is something they want to do in their classroom, and this is something they believe that will assist students, and this is something they believe that will help the students make those real-world connections. But how does teaching their content for the testing or the assessment we currently have, how does that fit into this kind of project-based learning environment? So we're working on different methods of assessment and moving towards that direction.
Okay, thank you. Good. I guess I missed that. So far, this is only sort of after-school activities. But
no, I mean, the two projects that we have today were both in school, in the classroom. I think from our perspective, when we're starting to work with new schools, we're starting with the after school. If we don't have that grassroots or those teachers that really want to start integrating directly into the classroom, we've got a lot of schools that are moving towards STEM labs and STEAM labs within their school and bringing students in as part of the school day, which is a great stepping stone there. And then hopefully those teachers will see what the great things that are happening in the STEM and STEAM labs and start to bring that back into their classrooms. And really, rather than teaching math and science in different silos, how can we combine those together with the other content areas that we teach in our schools?
Great, yeah, all that integration is huge. So then in Irving Middle School, it actually is happening during the day. So I had a question about that. Is that, are all the students at Irving Middle School exposed to that, or is it a special class?
This year we expanded to all of our 7th grade students at Irving. We have the math, the science, history, as well as our tech teachers all working close together to ensure that all students got a chance to experience this. As we look towards next year, we want to expand it from 7th grade to 8th grade students as well.
Wonderful, thank you. That's one of the things I worry about too, is that only there might be just a slice of kids who are exposed to this good stuff, and we want to make sure everybody is.
Yes, giving all students exposure and opportunity to engage and expand and explore, that's the premise behind this.
Wonderful, thank you. Just one more thing. I wanted to make a connection. Ms. Derenak Kofax and I have been looking into all kinds of pre-K programs since we got on the board, and one of the things that we found out about in the last couple years was a program at Wolf Trap Farm Park. The Wolf Trap Foundation actually has a pre-K and kindergarten STEM and the arts program that's very exciting, and you realize you can use these same ideas, putting art into engineering and science and tech for even 4-year-olds, and measure and see real growth in their creativity and problem solving. So it's exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting. The community, we involve the community as much as possible in this as well. We have architects, come in and work with the students during the day. We look at the artistic side of it, so they get to figure out part of their budget, the decorations, and how they want to complete the entire project. And to expand to the after-school part, whatever we can't complete during the school day, students are so hooked on it that they come after school to continue that project.
I have Mr. Strauss, to be followed by Mr. Becker.
This is really very exciting, and I know that over the years we've had individual school projects that have focused on STEAM, but it really, when we become intentional and actually have somebody to help coordinate this across the county, that it actually is able to take off. And sometimes people say, well, why do you develop curriculum? And this is exactly why we do it. And but the project-based learning, and again, as Dr. Garza said, Portrait of a Graduate, this is exactly where we would like to go. And a lot of us have thought that the tech labs in the middle school is just a fabulous place to start, because we already have the spaces and they are already outfitted in many ways in order to really make this leap and to be able to make it available for all of our students. So I'm very excited to hear about the collaboration and the spread throughout the county, because I think this is truly where we want to go. McLean Project for the Arts has had a project on STEAM, which is an organization that I work with, and they're very excited about that. And I would hope that we would also include our music and drama as well, because I know that there are projects and there has been curriculum written, actually, to help incorporate that as well. So it's very exciting, and thank you all very much.
Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of questions related to high school diplomas. And the first one I'm going to direct, if I may, to the staff at South Lakes, and then the second one to Dr. Garza. I am the parent of a Seahawk graduate, so I hope this is a softball.
Me too.
I know shortly after I came to the school board, I actually got a reference to an article that was referred to me by Mr. McElveen about an IB certificate or an IB diploma that had a focus on STEM. I think I probably am not saying it correctly. Sorry about that. But I was curious to see if that's something that we are offering in FCPS and in particular at South Lakes.
I think what you're referring to is the IB Career Certificate,
Yes.
the IBCC. And so that is an opportunity for students who may not desire to pursue the full IB diploma and want to focus more on career classes, whether they be design and tech that fits into the science and engineering, whether they're in culinary arts, they're more in the business marketing field. So it really expands our advanced academic opportunities in an IB school and allows students to be recognized for the work they're doing along the career and technical ed path rather than more of a core academic focus. So I think, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure South Lakes has the largest IBCC program in the county. We have a really strong staff who's done a lot of work. Students there also take an extra course called Approaches to Learning, which is similar to the Theory of Knowledge class that the diploma candidates take, that really looks at learning and why we learn, how we learn, making students very self-aware. And they have a project that they do in addition to their coursework. So we're very excited. I think the previous principal, Mr. Butler, had just started that before I came on board. So it's very new and it's still evolving and trying to figure out how to make it all work. But we've had a very strong response to it. And actually last year we did a freshman orientation week-long thing that we hadn't done before and talked about the IBCC. And it was fun to see some of the ninth graders who didn't really think of themselves as IB students hear about the IBCC opportunities and light bulbs go off. So that was a really rewarding moment for me.
I apologize for putting you on the spot. To my eyes, that was a home run. So.
Okay, thank you.
I agree, and we actually have been expanding that program throughout the division. It's a relatively new component of the IB program. I think it only started just a couple of years ago. But for example, I know Stewart High School has implemented it. I think we have quite a number of other schools throughout the division that are implementing the career pathways through IB.
And so, Dr. Garza, if I can follow up, I feel like I had an epiphany a couple of months ago in one of these meetings about, it has to do with high school diplomas. And I think there's some stuff going on, and I'm very curious, is it fair to ask you to tell us sort of where you are hoping to help the state come to more progress with diplomas?
And it's back to some other comments that were made previously. In order to do this kind of very much engaging and relevant work, we have to find room in the curriculum for it. I think that not only is something that we need to challenge ourselves about in terms of what we can change and what we have control of, and certainly I think there's a lot of work we can do there. But I think it's a broader conversation that we need to engage state leaders in, and we've been doing that, and you all have been doing that through the legislative program, is really challenging our legislators to give us some relief around assessment, the high stakes testing, hold us accountable, but do it in a way that does not require testing every student every year in every content area. There are much better ways to do that. It would, in doing so, it would provide us the room to do these kinds of things that are much more exciting and relevant and engaging to students. That's a conversation we've been having with as many legislators who will listen to us. But at the high school level, you can't have the conversation around assessment and changing assessment, state assessment, without also contemplating how one might change high school graduation requirements. And so as we talk about this, and I think Kim would agree with me, we have in our state a one-size-fits-all graduation program. We largely expect every student to meet the same graduation requirements. And furthermore, I think in recent past we've seen additions to that, just layering on more and more requirements, which takes out many of the opportunities for students to really explore particular areas of keen interest for them, that we could really provide them an opportunity to really thrive in, prepare for maybe the workforce or to college. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to think differently about high school requirements throughout the state. Likewise, the assessments that go along with that to meet those graduation standards. And I think we can meet the needs of a lot more students, potentially keep a lot more students in high school through graduation on time with their age-appropriate peer group if we were a little bit more flexible around those graduation standards. And I think do you agree with me, Kim?
I do. I think I do think we have a one-size-fits-all to a great extent right now, and we have so many kids who have such interest, and we're lucky in this county to have the opportunities we have. I don't know that all students get to really benefit from all of them because of the graduation requirements and the assessment requirements. So I look forward to, being able to be part of the dialogue that moves forward at the county level and hopefully at the state level to look at maybe doing things differently in the future.
I thank you both very much for that discussion.
And if I'd gotten a hard question, I would have punted it to Kim because she's very smart. So.
Okay. I have a Mrs. Schwartz.
Hi, I just wanted to go back because you briefly run over a couple of the programs that we have in the school and that you're looking to expand. And I was trying to write very quickly when you were saying that, but you were going over the GEMS, the 21st Century Technology Girls, the Cyber Patriot,
Yep.
and there was something else.
Robotics clubs.
The robotics clubs. Where are you in that stage, and like what percentage or how many schools offer these? Because of course the cyber draw would be, I don't think we promote it enough for our kids, and with the Cyber Corps, fee for service, I mean, I don't think kids know that the federal government will pay for you to go to college and finish your college, and oh, by the way, pay you $20,000 a year. And right now, there are so few students who end up graduating with those cyber skills from college that the federal agencies are literally fighting tooth and nail. And that's the kind of thing where we sort of combine the K through 12 portrait of a graduate we job train, we do a little bit of CTE, we prepare them for college, and oh, by the way, you're not only going to be a financially responsible citizen when you graduate, you're going to make money in college. So these are the kind of things that I'm wondering how pervasive they are in our system, and what we're doing to expand them.
Sure. Some of the clubs are very prominent throughout the county. I'm working directly, we're working directly with a little less than 50 schools right now. Again, we just started 6 months ago. So one of my first obligations in my new role is to go out and find out what's happening within our 200 schools that are working almost independent in regards to STEM or STEAM. So what are the good things that were happening out there, and how can we replicate those models? We're pretty familiar with the number of GEMS clubs and 21st Century Girls clubs that exist out there. Robotic clubs, schools are doing things from FIRST Robotics to VEX to Easy Robot to, there's Arduino, there's all different kinds of robotics clubs, and a lot of those are branching from how can we get somebody from the outside, from the community, that has a knowledge base that can spend time after school with our students. A lot of times our teachers within the schools are more than happy to commit the time, but might not have the experience in robotics to actually work with the students and develop them and promote that. So that's one of the roadblocks we're running into right now, and working with our advisory council to try to determine those additional sponsors. And a lot of the organizations that we're working with are already working with our schools, but are interested in expanding how they're working with our schools. In regards to cybersecurity and Cyber Patriot, we're expanding those, but again, the roadblocks we're running into is where can we find those sponsors that are willing to come in and work with our schools, and we're working to develop them within our council, within our team, and through other organizations such as Jay Grant within Fairfax County Public Schools to try to develop those relationships. Coding is very interesting. Rose and myself or myself and Rose's team are working to how can we integrate coding into K through 12 education, and where does that fit in? We're specifically looking at the math curriculum and how can we fit it into their standards to make sure we can teach those. We had a lot of schools that went into an hour of code and had a lot of success with that, and a lot of more schools are interested in doing that next year and expanding upon that.
So it's not because I'm just married to an international fellow in information assurance and cybersecurity that I'm asking these questions. But with those things, I see Jay Grant's position more on that business partnership side. And when we have an agency like the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency literally in our backyard, that's where, I'd love for us to be very intentional about reaching out to professionals in cyber, in intel, and we're in the seat of it, and it's as if that's an entirely different proposition, and I certainly would be very happy to engage, on this, because this is our kids' future. Yeah, I mean, this is where we put our curriculum and our CTE and our future planning all together, and kids really do benefit from this.
Thank you.
If I might add to that, I don't know if you want me to punt to you, Mr. Stark. Mr. Stork and I both serve on the foundation board, and now that we have full-time leadership there, we see a real opportunity. I give Jay Grant and wonderful people like you a lot of credit, because we've forged these partnerships with business and industry on almost an ad hoc basis. But it hasn't been a strategic, intentional strategy where I think I think Dan and I both have heard from business and industry. There are a lot of organizations, companies, businesses that would like to engage, but they don't know where to interact, where to come into the system. And I think we're on the cusp of a very thoughtful, the Foundation Board's really working with us, along with Mike Infernari, to really develop a plan. And a big piece of this has to be around STEM, STEAM, cybersecurity. In fact, we've even been talking with Nova University about that. There's an opportunity to really offer a program that's the first with a really tightly articulated program there. So I think there's a lot of opportunity building upon what these fine folks have already done.
Okay, Mr. Narcofax.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I really appreciate it, and I thank you, all my colleagues, for all of your conversation. I do want to mention, when you talk about the programs, I have been a proponent of what you had stated about taking best practices and making sure we have that across the county and in an equitable way. And also, my colleague, Ms. Smith, and I, we just went to the WABE meeting we had earlier this week, the Washington Area Boards of Education. And at that meeting, we talked about STEM. And there was a principal there, I think she was from the Falls Church City System, and she gave us a lot of information, a lot of very good information in her PowerPoint. So I'd like to share that with you as well. I mean, I'm certain you know a lot of it, but it's just another resource, and it just happens to be a timely coincidence that we had it last week, so we'll make sure we get that to you.
Great, thank you so much. If I could add one more thing, just based on a previous conversation that Mr. Little responded to. One of the great things I think about both these projects that they are extended over a period of time, and just specifically thinking about the Irving project, that started with 2 teachers, an elective teacher and a core content teacher that went to a technology training and learned about that technology training, and they discussed how can we integrate this into our classrooms together. So it started with 2 teachers, and that's kind of where we're focusing at. How can we build this grassroots? Those teachers started a project together, and then the other teachers within the same content area said, your students are engaged during this project. What are you doing differently in your classroom that we're not doing in our classroom? And then it started to grow. And then we had an entire core group that was working together with the project. And then this year, as Danny said, other core groups have stepped into it, along with the technology and engineering education teacher to bring it all together. So I just wanted to make that point. It started with 2 teachers that saw a great concept and wanted to work together and build it from there. And I think that's how this is successful. Thank you.
I know we could continue all night on this, couldn't we? But one thing that I think is important to your point, Scott, you know, we have pockets of excellence throughout our own school system on just about anything that you could bring up in terms of educational practice. So we're working on a way of sharing those best practices through our leadership conference, and so we'll be looking for proposals so that we have, you know, these teachers who do these really wonderful things that maybe no one else in the division knows about, and their enthusiasm and their ideas could really spark some great work in other places. So stay tuned on that. We're really working on how we can better highlight the great work that's being done all throughout our county and be able to share that across with other schools. So we'll be looking forward to a major strand on STEM.
Absolutely. Thank you.
STEAM.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next order of business is citizen participation. Fairfax County citizens who would like to address the school board should arrange to be placed on the speakers list by signing up online at www.fcps.edu or by calling the school board office at 571-423-1075. If the concern is a group concern, please consider appointing a spokesperson, and while the spokesperson is speaking, those in support may stand to show their support. The school board will not hear statements involving issues that have been scheduled for public hearings, such as capital improvement program, budget and boundaries, or personal attacks on any person. Complaints regarding individual students or school-based employees should not be raised at public meetings. Any such concerns should be directed to the appropriate school principal or other school officials. Citizens are encouraged to write the school board on any school-related topic. Speakers are requested to limit their remarks to not more than 3 minutes and provide at least 16 copies of their presentation for distribution to the board. Tonight, 2 citizens have signed up to address the board. Mark Serrana to be followed by George Becerra. Mr. Serrana.
Hello, my name is Mark Serrano, and today I'd like to talk about school security, specifically elementary schools. I'll start with part of an article that you have in front of you from CNN. Quote, earlier this year, the school principal ordered a new security system to be installed that required visitors to be identified and buzzed in. As part of the security system, the school locked its doors each day at 9:30 a.m. Does this sound like a typical elementary school at Fairfax County? This happens to be the Sandy Hook Elementary School on the day of the shooting. Although this sounds like a typical FCPS security system, I can assure you this is not what happens at FCPS. I believe our elementary schools have a serious lack of security. I worked for FCPS for a little over a year, from 2012 to 13. My role included many visits to different elementary schools throughout the county. Many times as I approached the school, I'd find it unsecured. Doors would not be locked. Someone from the inside would open the door for me. An office person would buzz me in without asking my purpose, or I would not be asked to show my ID or my badge. What I have come to learn is that every school is different in their emphasis on security. It's up to the principal to enforce the standards. Although you might hear differently from FCPS security, what we have is 139 individual security procedures instead of one main one. I challenge you as the board to visit as many elementary schools as possible, but do this unannounced. I've seen what a school board member school visit looks like. It's very well planned by the school, even down to the reserved parking space. Please go during the school day unannounced. When you walk up to the door, don't hit the buzzer. Try the handle, see if it's unlocked. If it's locked, see if there's someone inside. If so, give them a friendly wave. See if they open it up for you. If that doesn't work, hit the buzzer. If they don't buzz you right in, tell them you have a, quote, meeting. If they ask you for your name, give it to them. You shouldn't be let in because you don't have an appointment. If they let you in, go to the office and purposely don't show your badge or driver's license. My educated guess is that you will have no trouble gaining access. Working in the private sector, what I just described does not happen. Parents drop off their kids at school and most of them drive to an office that has a receptionist or a security guard sitting outside a locked door with a card reader on it, much like there is at Gatehouse. The receptionist doesn't just let people inside without checking first. Usually they look at a simple shared Outlook calendar or they call the person involved in the meeting to check. There are also constant reminders about no piggybacking and show your badge at all times. These simple steps put in place by a single security plan would eliminate many of the mistakes that happen at our schools on a daily basis. I've also shared my concerns with the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. I've asked them to look at the possibility of assigning police officers to schools. Even assigning multiple schools to a single officer who could visit randomly on a weekly basis would be a good deterrent. I'm awaiting their response. Finally, I'm a graduate from Chantilly High School, and while there, my chemistry teacher, Mr. Artis, once said something along the lines of this, quote, "At some point, school security will have a bigger role than the actual education itself." Sadly, I believe that time came over a year ago in Newtown, Connecticut. Thank you for your time.
Dr. Gajda, do you want to speak?
Yes, Mr. Toronto, I appreciate your bringing your concerns and also your ideas to us. You know, the safety of our students is our #1 priority, and it has to be. I think our parents expect that, and they should expect it. You know, with as many schools as we have, are there places where we can continue to improve? You know, I know that's probably the case, but we take this very seriously. We conduct audits of our school system. But we are very much aware. Mr. Toronto's been kind enough to send us his concerns and his list of suggestions. So I'm well aware of those, Mr. Plattenberg, and so has Mr. Ellis is also aware. So we thank you for your interest and willingness to work. I like your ideas about, you know, police officers occasionally coming by some of our elementary schools. So we'll work through that, and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next speaker is George Becerra.
Good evening, Dr. Garza and school board members. Sorry, got a hoarse voice. Got a couple of topics tonight. The first one, I start with retreats. In general, your retreats that you have where you make your critical decisions aren't taped in any way. I'm talking audio or something. Ms. Lufglass, if you could look at this in terms of a simple, whatever, you know, camcorder or something, but those are where you guys make the biggest decisions, and those are not taped. I thought for $13,000, when Ms. Evans did a couple years ago, that I was going to do work sessions. This included also the retreat, but I guess not. Another option is, or another topic I'd like to talk is town halls, the budget ones that are coming up that you guys have started. Mount Vernon has already had theirs with Mr. Highland and well attended. Hunter Mill just this past Saturday. Yesterday was Drainsville Part 1 out of 3 at Great Falls Library with Supervisor Faust. The 5th, or this Monday is Springfield. Wednesday, the 10th with Harity. And then the 12th is Braddock. 18th is Mason Providence. And then you have the 1st Braddock, and then you have the 26th at Lee. So hopefully all y'all are there. Strategic collaboration, that's what I'm asking each one of them. And I'm going to the Board of Supervisors and saying how you guys are doing your strategic planning together. For example, one example, a lot of the board advisors already said it. They have an IT plan of 5 years, but on your budget, you're taking IT specialists away from the classroom. they don't see the cohesion there. If they're investing so many millions, they don't see where schools are taking their IT folks out. I understand, Dr. Garza, you're new. You're not going to know that nuances yet. You'll get familiar with that and know where there's a big cohesion with both of y'all in terms of board members and supervisors. Next, SOLs, or talk about school days or closings of schools because of snow. SOLs, please try to think about extending it, because I think last time this occurred, the issue was brought up, and you could extend it to the end of the month almost. So let's move the SOLs back a couple days. If you're talking about, it's going to be romper room for these kids anyway. Once you give them at the beginning of the year, teachers aren't going to be handled. It's just, like I said, babysitting. So maybe if you can move it back a couple days for student achievement. Again, student achievement. Another aspect I wanted to talk about is custodians and food service workers. I know FEA will be talking about this later as the budget season comes along, so I can hear their voice because they don't truly have voices in this community. Dr. Bajada presented the other day to MSAOC, 96% of the workers are minority or majority also, and I had to say is first generation. So we're talking about income equality here, which I applaud Ms. Schultz for bringing that up. But at the end of the day, 10 out of the 12 here are on one team here. And just in case income inequality you need education on, come February 25th, Falls Church High School at 6:30 for an hour presentation on that. So please look at that tonight while you're thinking about deciding on your vote tonight. Last thing is, not popular with the crowd and more pleasing to you all, if you can give me extra time, is pay raises for school board members in the next go-around next year. Hopefully Ms. Quinn can bring that up for next year, and the strategic multi-year planning is to get school boards double the pay, from 20 to 40. Board of Supervisors get about 70, 75,000. I need FEC, FCAG, sleep, real food for kids. If you're really advocates of schools, they know what you guys do. Sacrifice families, sacrifice every time, hard on marriages, different things. I do need the advocates also to step up to also win this battle for you all, because politically it doesn't look correct if you guys are asking for more money.
Thank you, Mr. Massaro. Next, we have action items. The first one is FY 2014 third quarter budget review. And board members, I want to bring your attention to the script on the table. We'll go by the script. Mr. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the school board approve revenue and expenditure adjustments as reflected in the FY 2014 third quarter budget review and as detailed in the agenda item.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Reed. Mr. Welcome, you want to speak on your motion?
I have no comments at this time.
Mrs. Reed.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And this is probably coming as a bit of a surprise, but I'll just tell you that I had contemplated an amendment adding to what my colleagues have put forth, but after talking with Dr. Garza, I will not be putting forth an amendment, but I do have a question for Dr. Garza. And my amendment was really an attempt to ask the question, have we scrubbed our books carefully in 2014, and are we making sure that we're saving as much money now as we can? My initial thought was to direct the superintendent to look at that, but after discussing with her, she's made it clear that they in fact are already doing that. So I wanted to give her an opportunity to share with all of us in the public just what we're doing in this current fiscal year to try to save money, as we know our pressing situation come next fiscal year. Thank you, Dr. Garza.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Reed. You know, we've been engaged in the budget development process for almost 7 months, and a part of that process has been looking at everyone's department budget in great detail. So it's given us an opportunity to see where we're currently really spending money. So while that exercise has been about the development of the fiscal year 15 budget, it's also provided us an opportunity to really analyze deeply kind of where we are currently spending money. And so with that being said, we recognize these challenging times that we have. We also recognize that in this current budget, you know, we're cutting, you know, we're having to look at positions all throughout our system, 731 of them. So some of the efforts that we've undertaken is essentially a freeze on hiring. Now, I don't say it's a firm freeze on hiring because there's some positions that we absolutely have to fill, but we are looking at every position as they come up and asking that hard question, Is it necessary for us to fill it at this time? Can we do with temporary if there's work that needs to be done, or can we do without it? So that's been underway for some time. Any large expenditures, it has to go pretty high level throughout the system to make sure that we're spending our dollars in the way that we need to. Travel, we've curtailed travel. There's a new kind of approval process, even travel that we're not having to pay for. Because I think people, when they see that we're traveling to different conferences and things like that, it's still, question in people's minds about why we're spending that kind of money. So we've really looked hard at travel, where we're spending money on consultants. So that work has been underway and has been for some time. But to that point, also, I want to make sure it's clear to the public that this process, our school board has a very well-defined process for how we manage the public's money. And I think they do that, and I think the process works. For an example, at this third quarter review, we had some money left over in staffing reserve. That money was brought forward to you. We suggested some places where we needed some additional money, including the Baileys, opening operational costs for opening Baileys. And that's a typical process for you all to have engaged in. And then there's no hidden money. I need to be really clear on this. There is no hidden money. So despite what people might say or ask about our salary files or ask about this, any expenditure, any monies that we do not spend, it comes out in our year-end balance. So in that year-end balance, we've been very reliant upon those dollars on an annual basis. So I give Susan Quinn and her team a lot of credit. I believe they do a really good job of managing dollars and being transparent in the execution of those dollars. But I think your point's very well made and taken, and that is we need to be, not only are we looking forward to fiscal year 15 and some really difficult decisions, but we need to currently be looking at everything we're doing to make sure that we're spending every dollar in the most efficient and effective manner and really utilizing those dollars well. So thank you for your question.
Are you done, Mrs. Street? Ms. Hines?
Just to follow up a little bit on that, I am looking at, I guess it's item B on, let's see, I'm on page 2 of the attachment, and it's the compensation adjustment staffing reserve. And just to get back to that a little bit, because I think there is a sense among some in the community that we pad this part of what we do, that we put too many positions into this staffing reserve, that we underestimate what our salary savings would be during the year, so that we will have some kind of big savings at the end of the year that we can roll into the next year. That's what I'm hearing from people. And the reality is that by the time we get done using up the staffing reserve and realize the retirements and hiring new people and the savings that sometimes gives us, the bottom line at the end of the day is that adding that amount of money that's left at the end of the year with all the other extras that we have from our conservative budgeting, which we have to do because we can't run in the red and we can't turn kids away. So we're going to have some money at the end of the year. Our ending balance is between 1% and 2% of our total operating budget, which, as I understand it, is actually well within expected norms for a large public institution like ours. I don't know if you wanted to.
Well, yes, actually, I would say we run it pretty tight. Most accounting principals would even have most organizations would expect us to have more than what we currently do. But we understand in tough, difficult budget times, we run pretty close. But let me elaborate on that. And again, it's about that. There's no hidden money. Our salary file, every year our budget's based upon a projection. And I think most people understand that. There is no exact science for a budget. You base it upon the best that you know about current conditions and your history, the pattern of cost. But this year, for an example, our at the end of this cycle, this budget year, we may end up having to spend more on electricity costs than we have. We're going to be talking about snow removal in the near future. So there are things that happen that are unknown, and so the budget's based on a projection. So it's at that year-end balance that people tend to want to talk about, the staffing reserve, which we run very tight. We only had 14 positions remaining, and we traded back in 9 of those, and you were able to determine how you would spend that money differently. But that's pretty tight. But in terms of our staffing, our overall salary lapse, and kind of just the way we handle our compensation, I think the key question, I think we get mired in the details, but ultimately that shows up in our year-end balance. When we have positions that become available and open, those are not often filled immediately, and sometimes they're filled with someone that's more expensive. Sometimes it's someone that's less expensive. So there's variation within that file. But at the end of the day, what percentage of year-end balance do we think is appropriate and reasonable? I think where we are is about where best we can be. I would be very fearful if we went tighter than that, and I think our public would be would be concerned. I would think they would need to be, because what if we got to a place where we couldn't make payroll? Or, there's accounting principles I think that people would tell you have to have some year end, or you're being irresponsible with budgeting too tight. And I would also use this opportunity to point out that our county has a year-end balance, and it's not a criticism. They should have a year-end balance. They're large too. Any large organization is going to have a year-end balance. It's what our threshold for that would be.
Ms. Hines, are you done? Anybody else? Okay, then let me call on Mr. Schorsch for an amendment.
Okay, I have an amendment. I move to amend the main motion by A, decreasing funding for bus fuel by $254,000 in recognition of savings resulting from the 6 missed days of school due to weather that will not be made up, and B, redirecting those savings to provide 2 days of lost wages for the school-based food service employees as a result of school closures due to weather.
Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Evans. Mr. Schorsch, you want to speak on your motion?
Yes, so I was doing, back when we had the third quarter review presented to us, and I was running through some numbers, and we received a Friday fan out. And the more I started putting together some of the budget matters for the third quarter, and of course we were pressed with all of the snow days and related matters, and then the information in the fan out, I started peeling back the layers of the onion to find out. I was worried about basically the employees that are at the very bottom of our pay scale. And I was thinking, are we having, a host of employees who are bus drivers, custodians, and food service in the schools that are hourly and probably on the bubble anyway, being impacted, and that was a lot of days. And through the discussions with staff and particularly Ms. Quinn, it became clear that the first 3 days, that we do not have to make up, are already included for the food service employees. Custodians are 12-month employees, so they're covered. And frankly, they're going to be working overtime and hopefully building strong muscles, getting all that snow clear. And then the bus drivers, unbeknownst, actually, I've talked to a number of you, many of us did not know that the bus driver contracts are actually include snow days to get to a minimum to encourage recruitment, because we know there are going to be snow days, and the drivers know they're not going to be paid. So when it was all ferreted out, we had one class of employees who are, frankly, some of our lowest paid employees, who right now really actually have lost 4 days. I know that there's a plan to add 2 days to the end of the year. I am fighting vigorously and researching for ways for us to obtain a waiver, even though we're being dissuaded by the state from applying for one. But, so I'm going to handle the 2 days that we just incurred this year later. If in fact we get a waiver from the state, that would be in a fourth quarter review and a final budget review. But the 2 days that were the state emergency days are lost to those employees. There are 1,300 employees. It's $127,000 a day for the 1,300 employees. And we have realized a savings of approximately $300,000 in fuel. So this isn't going to cost us any money. That's the beauty of it. We're just redirecting money that we didn't spend on fuel, and we will still have some left to apply to those last 2 days if we get there. So it's relatively straightforward. We're just redirecting monies that we already have. We're not spending more money. But what we are doing, I think, is addressing something that I think is inadequate in our policy of treating just one class of employees differently than we treat everybody else.
Ms. Evans?
Yes, thank you. And first, I want to thank Mrs. Schultz for thinking about this issue and raising it and doing the research on it for all of us. I think that this is an important step. I was looking back at our Human Resources Monitoring Report, the last one that we got, and one of the pieces on that is how many of our employees are paid under what's known as the living wage. And we've made some improvements on that, but more than half of the employees who are below the living wage are the food service workers. So I think it's really, it makes it incumbent upon us to be sensitive to this group of employees. And I also appreciate all the work that Mrs. Schultz and Mrs. Quinn and Dr. Pajardo did to look at the other classifications of employees. I do have one concern. I totally support what Mrs. Schultz plans to do here. I have a concern about our parent liaisons. Our parent liaisons are also hourly workers, and so when we have snow days, if they're scheduled to work on those days, and I will say, I do hope that there comes a time that these absolutely critical members of our school staff are in cases where they are needed, you know, for full-time, that they are in fact full-time employees. And a number of our schools, a number of my schools do need parent liaisons full-time, sometimes more than one. So I do have a concern about those employees as well, and I've had a brief conversation with Dr. Garza about it, and I wanted to ask her this question about what we might be doing for those parent liaisons who have lost pay because of the snow days.
Yes, thank you for the question. You know, our staff, I believe, have done a really good job of looking at impact on all classification of employees to see where we might need to help. For an example, some of our employees most dramatically affected by the loss of the school days, in some cases, are struggling with making their payments for health care. And our staff has really worked with helping spread those payments out so they could still have their health benefits. And so I believe our team has done a really good job on that. As it relates to our parent liaisons, our principals have resources available to them so that they can hire them to help with additional work that's going on at the school level. So I believe that if we just bring it to the attention of our principals, that they might be cognizant of the fact that some of our parent liaisons may have been affected by the weather. You know, I know principals will tell you there's always work to be done, and they value their parent liaisons a lot. And so I think if we just bring it to the attention of principals, that if they could help us in providing them an opportunity to, you know, work some of those additional hours and get that, you know, to kind of restore their pay, I'm certain that our principals would work with us. So we're happy to share that and just bring it to the attention of our campus leaders.
I think that's excellent, because I know that the money then goes back to the school and they have it available. And as you say, there are always things to be done, particularly with the added school days and meetings, you know, even in the evening. So I am glad to hear that we'll get that
data out to the principals. I do wonder about those who are, and you and I had a brief discussion about this, that those who are at 39 and a half hours and are concerned that they might not be able to go beyond 39 and a half hours because they're part-time. Did you want to speak to that as well?
Mrs. Quinn and Dr. Pajardo have checked into that. It's fine for them to collect overtime in those circumstances as long as it's not on a routine basis. So for this purpose, if it's just a few times, maybe a couple of weeks or a day or two here and there, where they might have to go into an overtime situation, it's perfectly fine for us to do that.
Will we be reminding the principals of that as well?
Yes, we will.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have Mrs. Strauss next.
Thank you. I move to amend the amendment by inserting the following additional language, which would be C, directing the superintendent to design a professional development opportunity for school-based food service employees to participate in as a condition of receiving payment for the lost wages, and this professional development opportunity would be based on our continued efforts to encourage students to make healthier food choices and the recommendations of the Food and Nutrition Services Study. And if there's a second, I would like to speak to it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Strauss, you want to speak on your amendment?
Yes. Mrs. Schultz has identified some additional savings out of the fuel account, which I appreciate the research on that. There will likely be a need for our food services workers to do some additional work on our serving our children our healthy choices. And this would give us an opportunity to be able to provide that additional time, compensating them for that to make up for their lost days. I certainly don't foresee a huge county-wide meeting because most of our workers, they are there in school, and that is where they're carrying out their job. But I would see this as almost a two-for, that we would make good use of the savings that have been identified to help further the support that we know our food service workers, I think, would welcome and would need, because we know if we want our children to make healthy food choices, and if we are going to carry out some of probably the recommendations from our FNS study, it will take a little more time with our employees on the ground in our schools to actually carry them out. So I would see this as an interesting, good use of the savings that have been identified and would help to make up the wages lost by our employees. So I see this as a win-win. Thank you.
Mrs. Smith. I have Mrs. Schultz to be followed by Ms. McElveen.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to talk to Ms. Strauss. I didn't know about this amendment until late today. And frankly, I think it undoes the entire intent of the amendment. The amendment was to address the fact that all the other employees who either already receive compensation or opportunities for compensation are treated differently than our food service employees. And I think this actually exacerbates the problem. I think it treats them even worse by saying what I tried to do with the amendment was to take the fuel savings that we had, not apply additional cost to the system, and say that we respect the food service employees in the same manner that we respect the other hourly employees, such as custodians who have a 12-month contract, or the bus drivers who are receiving pay for those snow days. So to make the food service workers chase an additional carrot in order to receive the payment that I think brings equity to the policy of treating the employees the same in the first place, I actually find it a little bit offensive. So I can't support that. And in addition, I think what it does is also it exacerbates the problem, because using additional staff time to create professional development for them, the whole reason that they didn't get paid is they weren't in the building. And if they're going to be in the building on a school day, they're going to be paid for that day. So this is to make up for days that they weren't able to come into the building and work. And all the school days that remain, they will be able to work, and they're scheduled to work, so they will get paid. So to have them come in for professional development means they would have to come at either a time that they're already being paid, or to come in at a time that they're not being paid, which further exacerbates their time. So, and it costs our staff time and money to develop professional development. So I can't support this amendment.
I have Mr. McElvin to be followed by Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Moon. I appreciate Ms. Strauss's intent here because I think what's going to come out of our conversation on Monday is going to be a need for more professional development for our food staff. But this puts us in a very tough place because I have no idea where we're going to end up on Monday. We didn't get the food report until 7:02 p.m., which is 2 minutes after this meeting started. So it's very difficult for this board to come to a decision on that before we have a conversation about it. The other thing that's very confusing to me here is the fact that these employees are paid out of the F&S fund, which means that the board does not control their pay. The F&S director controls their pay based on many conditions within our F&S department. And so I'm a little confused at how this is going to work to begin with. So Mrs. Quinn, could you explain to us how this would work financially, either piece?
Even though typically the food and food service workers would get paid out of the Food and Nutrition Services Fund, for this particular amendment, we would retain the charges in the operating fund. So we would have savings within the operating fund, and we would use the funds available in operating fund to show the expenditures or reimburse those expenses in the Food and Nutrition Services Fund. Did that?
Okay, thanks. In terms of values, I do, as Ms. Evans brought up, the value of a living wage. I think that's something this board has never broached, which I think we might be interested in broaching. Who knows if we could ever uphold something like that because of the financial straits we're in and will continue to be in. But I think that needs to be divorced from what we're discussing now, which is to pay people who did not, in fact, work. And as unfortunate as that is, we have many people in our community who are retail workers that couldn't get to work, couldn't get paid. And unfortunately, that's an act of God. It's a fact of nature, and we just can't deal with it. So there are two different values there. It's not that we don't believe that our employees should be paid a living wage. It's just that, you know, sometimes that's life.
Mrs. Smith.
Thank you, Chairman Moon. I appreciate Mr. McElveen's questions. I think this is one of the issues that's hard to deal with here in understanding it. And for me, I don't want to make a connection between bus drivers and our food service workers because they're under different contracts. The situation's different. Since we're, and probably some of my questions need to come up when we talk about the main motion again. But in the amendment, I guess I want to understand better how we would set up a professional development and when that would take place and what kind of resources. How would that really work to be able to provide that?
Yes. Dr. Garza or Ms. Quinn?
You know, and this is a question that came up, you know, earlier today. We're very sympathetic to the challenges our food service workers, like the rest of them. This is a unique group, right? And we're trying to maintain, it's an area where we need to maintain and stabilize our workforce and not have a lot of turnover, or to the extent we possibly can maintain that. But it's a question of whether or not, do we expect something for that, you know, pay. We recognize it affects them very hard when they're not working like it does other people, but is there something value we can get from having done this? And so I think that was the work that was done today with Ms. Strauss working on this amendment. There's always opportunity for more learning around food nutrition as we change standards from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as we look at our prismatic study moving forward, as we have turnover. So, you know, I'm not sure what date that would occur, but I'm certain we can, you know, that's not going to be a problem. I think that it would take very little resource for us to, you know, we have the internal capacity to provide the training that would be necessary. So I doubt there would be, you know, significant, I think it would be very minimal cost associated with it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, it is, we all know it's hard when we get information, you know, late, even all of this, to think about it and decide where to go. And then weighing that against the expectations with employees, contracts, and the way they're supposed to be paid, and weighing those things. And to me, it's not about valuing some employees more than other employees, but you know, we have limited resources, we have ways we do things, and balancing all that is a difficult decision to make.
Okay, I have so far 4 more board members, starting with Mrs. McLaughlin, to be followed by Mrs. Reed and Mr. Stork and Ms. Evans. But before I go to Mrs. McLaughlin, let me chime in right now with a couple of questions. Ms. Quinn, you know, almost all of our food services workers, they are part-time workers, correct?
Correct.
And they are provided with a full-time benefit, though?
Yes. They are provided with benefits that would be provided to a full-time employee.
Okay, thank you. I think that is an important point, you know, for us to remember that obviously, as a good employer, I mean, I certainly believe in providing living wage to all our employees. I had always advocated for that. You know, certain group of employees, you know, might be getting paid, you know, less than other groups. We realize that. There will always be that situation. However, with our food service workers, even though they may not be getting paid more than other groups as a group, but with them, most of them being a part-time, almost all of them being a part-time workers, we are still providing them with the full-time benefits. I think that's one of the most attractive features about it being a full-service worker in Fairfax County Public School system. And many of our full service workers choose to work part-time, but also want to get the benefit of full-time, you know, workers. I just want to point that out for the public and other board members as well. And as far as the distinction between ones who are getting paid on the snow days versus those who are not getting paid, I want to draw a comparison between, I think something Ms. Evans pointed out is parent liaisons. They are as valuable, if not more, than other groups of employees. But because the nature of their contract, just like a full service workers, they're not getting paid on the days they're not working. And so we are trying to, being mindful of that, we are trying to, we'll notify, we'll talk with them, we'll engage the school principals, so the school principals, as superintendent pointed out, that there are work to be done. There are work to be done, and the principals, will talk with the parent liaisons, provide them with work they should be doing, which they couldn't do because of snow days, and they will get compensated for additional work they will be doing. I think what Mrs. Strauss is trying to accomplish from her own amendment is that we want to be a good employer to our employees at the same time. As a fiduciary of scarce resources, it's a tax is being paid for by taxpayers. We know how burdensome that can be. That we're not just giving away money. There are work to be done, and training will need to be done. So there is providing an opportunity for full services workers to earn additional income. I think that's one of the major reasons I can support Mrs. Strauss's amendment. Mrs. McLaughlin.
I very much appreciate all of the remarks that my colleagues have shared. I think that Chairman Moon captured it best, that Fairfax County being one of the largest employers in the state, it's important to us as a board that we try to model really thoughtful and best practices in the way that we treat our employees. But Mr. McElveen also captured the fact that here in Fairfax County, we have many of our residents who are hourly employees who were affected by the snow, and many of them are also taxpayers. How do we explain that we're going to take taxpayer funds and try to pay and compensate our employees when others will not have that benefit? So I really feel that Ms. Strauss's amendment really strikes the best balance, and it also serves the best interest of the school system. We know that we need some improvements in our food service, and this is a way to help make our employees whole, but it's also a way to make sure that as we are trying to improve our food services, this is critical funding. $250,000, that's 2 teaching positions. And we know, as a board, as we're struggling to find every dollar we can to address the needs of our students in the classroom, again, I really want to thank everyone. Ms. Schultz, thank you for bringing this to our attention and demonstrating how important it is to care about every employee in the school system. And Ms. Strauss, I appreciate you trying to be thoughtful about this as well and bringing this as an option for us, because it makes me very comfortable to support this. As I said, I think it's a win-win for all individuals involved, and I hope that people will support Ms. Strauss's amendment.
Mrs. Reed?
Thank you, Chairman Moon. Looking at the 2 amendments, in all seriousness, I stopped reading after I heard the word savings. So we have recognized some savings because of the bus fuels, and I think because of the situation that we're in right now, we need to have a very serious discussion about what we're doing with any savings that we accrue, regardless of what good intentions we may have. So I can't support either amendment because I feel that right now both of these suggestions are very nice. I don't feel that either of them are essential, and I feel that we need to be putting a different lens through our expenditures right now.
Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Strauss, I have a question on your amendment. I'm not clear. I understand the professional development, and the professional development, was it intended to specifically correlate to the number of hours that the staff would have missed working on those days, or is it intended to be more of a whatever number of hours this professional development training would involve, that would be what they would be paid for?
I believe that I think we have to leave the amount of hours that it would take. It depends on I think the content of the professional development to be undertaken. I would assume, again, that there is more work to be done in food nutrition services with learning procedures in the new federal guidelines. So my idea was not necessarily to say there must be X number of hours in trade-off for exactly the snow days, but rather this is an opportunity for these employees to again, provide additional work to FCPS in exchange for being able to be paid those hourly wages that were missed during the snowstorm. In other words, to get quality, because I do think as an employer, we also have to be careful. Fairly compensate our employees, but also value for what we are compensating people for. So as I say, I think this is a win-win, a way to be able to do this, an opportunity for the employees to provide additional service for which we would pay them.
What I heard you say, and I guess I just want to confirm this because this is important to my consideration of this, is that they would be compensated for the hours that they spent in professional development, not specifically any hours that they lost. It would just be, this would be an opportunity for people who attended this professional development to be paid for that over and above what they may otherwise have earned in
Yes.
and the performance
That
of
would
the
be my
regular duties.
understanding. I can't say how many exact hours that would be, but it
and that's
is.
fine.
Right, an opportunity to, in the same ways that we had heard about for the parent liaisons, that there is additional work to be had for these people in schools, and it is an opportunity for them to make up for some of the loss for the snow days. I would see this in the same vein. Thanks.
And I guess the expectation that would probably go along with that is, given that they've lost at least a couple days worth of work, it's unlikely that that would amount to the 10 hours or whatever the number of hours that they may have worked. It would be some probably lesser amount of hours that this professional development is likely to entail.
I would have to defer to the people in this department.
Let me ask Dr. Garza, I know this is just a conversation at this point in time, but what is is your sense that it would, whatever that professional development is, but it's unlikely to be multiple days, let's probably say that. But
I'd probably like for Susan Quinn to weigh in on this, but it won't be, I don't think we should go so far as to say it's an hour per hour trade-off, but I think it's an expectation that's relatively comparable to what they would have worked given, if we had not had the snow days. But I want it to be meaningful time, and certainly time that we can benefit from it as a division, but I don't think we would go so far as to track hour per hour, but I'd like for Susan to weigh in.
That's correct. If we keep in mind that a typical day for our majority of our food service workers, it's only 3 to 4 hours. That's what they're getting paid. So if we were to hold it on a full day, that is a long day that would cover 2 days worth of their typical hours.
So I understand better. Maybe the bottom line for me as a business person is that the cost of doing this is likely to be less than the, in essence, savings that we've incurred, the money that's referenced in here, from doing this than it would be to have paid them for those services. So we're not looking at spending more money as a result of this. We're looking at spending somewhat less, but still something more than if we were not to pay those employees at all for those days.
That's correct, I think, if I understand it correctly. So preparing the training materials, and I mean, obviously we are going to be requiring some professional developments. I think this is a great opportunity to provide them and
Agreed.
provide them the opportunity to, I guess, earn back some of the lost wages due to the snow days.
Agreed. And follow-up question on that is, what, if any, floating days or other time off do these staff members have? Do they have any options to provide or to utilize any kind of time that they may have accrued for some reason or another?
They are currently built into their contract. It's just the 3 snow days. So those have been used up. So any additional day that we are not going to make up is what they're losing. So obviously they do accrue some sick hours, but they do not have any other floating days where they would be getting paid.
And they would not have the opportunity to use those sick hours for days that schools are closed?
Correct.
Okay. I know from personal knowledge of having looked at this issue 5 or 6 years ago, the benefits, the health benefits in particular that our cafeteria workers have are wonderful and a key part of why many people select and do that work, because it gives them flexibility and gives them something that is truly valuable, which is a health benefit that can't be taken away, which now in this day and age maybe isn't quite as important as it once was, but it's still, I think, an important part of the benefits that they get. I particularly am sensitive to this issue because I had to make these kind of decisions for my staff, and it's very uncomfortable. Particularly, you are absolutely typically affecting the lower paid employees because they're typically hourly employees. The salaried employees obviously have other flexibility to perform their work. So it's something that I'm very sensitive to, and the choices that I made, aren't necessarily the choices that we have to make here, but still ones that I need to weigh and kind of assess at least the equity of that. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote finally, but I probably will support this amendment because I think regardless, it serves a purpose, which is something we all recognize needs to be done, which is additional professional development training for our cafeteria workers. Thank you.
I have Ms. Evans to be followed by Mr. Velkov and Mr. Fairfax.
Mr. Chair, I have a point of information. Based on what's just been said, it would appear that...
Mr. Schultz, could you wait
I know,
until...
no, I have a point of information.
A point of information has to be recognized by chair. If you want to speak, you need to be recognized by chair. So
I have a point of information.
yes, but let me go to Ms. Evans and Mr. Velkov and Mr. Fairfax, and I'll call on you. Okay, let's wait on the order.
No, under Robert's rules, the point of clarification needs to be made now so that it impacts what my colleagues are going to say about this. I don't need to be recognized for that in order.
Parliamentarian. If a parliamentarian cannot, okay, parliamentarian. All right, for the sake of continuing with the meeting, I'm gonna call Mr. Schultz out of order. Ms. Evans.
All right. I agree that the amendment that Mrs. Strauss has offered is, in fact, a win-win situation. I feel very strongly that we need to do whatever we can to help our employees who are our lower paid employees make this up. But the fact that we would find a way for them to make it up by working those hours that they lost is a positive thing. And I'm glad to hear Dr. Garza say that it will be meaningful, because I think that we don't want to just have make work. We are going to have our report on Monday about the prismatic report and our healthier food options. There will be work to be done on that, and certainly our food service workers are fundamental part of that. So I've got to think that there would be training, development, or at least some sort of work. And I don't know that I would necessarily limit it to professional development. It says professional development, but I would hope there would be some flexibility in there if there are other things that our food service workers can do to basically get their hours back. You know, that's what we're talking about, getting hours back. And so I would support Mrs. Strauss's amendment, and I do think this improves it. Thank you.
Mr. Velkov.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that if we were to pass the main motion, I think the amendment that Mrs. Strauss has made is essential, so I will be supporting it. I'm going to reserve comments about the main motion until when we get to that.
Mr. Fairfax.
Thank you. It's interesting, I think, this particular amendment and the way we're all talking today. Lots of times we come to the table with lots of decisions already made, and I think if you can all see, we have not done that based upon meeting times and agendas and the time we got some of these amendments. So we're all kind of thinking out loud into the microphone, which always makes me uncomfortable, but I'll go anyway. And here's what I think. Many people have made good points. I do, part of me agrees with Ms. Reed. As soon as you said we've had a savings, I have been through this battle right now, and we are battling, and every bit of savings is a savings, and that will go forward towards something next year. So that was my first point of thought. But as and the other thing, the other point that, while I appreciate the gesture of Ms. Schultz, I think Mr. Moon and a lot of us know this, that it is a choice for many of our food service workers to choose a part-time job, and they do receive quite good benefits, as many part-time jobs do not have that full-time benefit that we are offering these employees. So I see the amendment that Ms. Strauss has then made as one that can, as other people have called it, a good compromise. Because, we compare them to parent liaisons, and we ask that the principals be mindful, but we're not regulating that, so we're not certain that they will get those lost wages. I think that's, we can ask them to be mindful, but it doesn't guarantee anything. At this point, my inclination is to, because of course we know we have a very wide, just some knowledge about, some language about how this professional development can go forward. I think the timeliness of Monday's work session, being able to look at what the needs are, what type of professional development can help these workers in their jobs, I'm likely to support this at that point. But there's lots of things here going on, and I think we have to be very mindful of the situation we're in. And saying a savings is a savings, and sometimes all of these nice to-dos aren't as easy for us as they once were, because we're taking monies from one group, and as Ms. McLaughlin pointed out, it can be 2 teacher salaries here. So that's my brain flow.
Mr. Schultz.
So first of all, we're going to get back to a point of order and a question. The amendment that's actually on the table is out of order. This is not an amendment to my amendment. This is a substitute amendment. Because it contemplates the receiving of payment for lost wages that is provided in A and B above. And A and B above does not contemplate a partial remuneration or additional work time to be indebted by the employees in order to receive it. This is paying for the 2 lost days. So if Ms. Strauss had wanted a substitute amendment, she could have posed a substitute amendment which offered what Mr. Stork contemplated, which is if they come for professional development for a certain number of hours, they can be remunerated for those certain number of hours. A and B do not provide for that circumstance, therefore C is out of order, and C cannot be voted upon by this board, unfortunately. And if Ms. Strauss had worked with me, I may have known this in advance, but I didn't. And what is left in C does not allow for an hour-by-hour compensation or a partial payment to employees to show up for professional development at an unspecified time, at an unspecified place, for an unspecified period of time. So I'd ask that the chair rule the amendment out of order. And I have additional comments, but I'll let the chair comment first.
Okay, chair is going to overrule the request from Mrs. Schultz to hold Mrs. Strauss' amendment to the amendment out of order. As I see it, the 2 parts amendment, Mrs. Schultz, the first part identifies source of funding. Second part is the area of expenditure. And from my perspective, Mrs. Strauss's amendments places a condition for payment. So I am going to overrule the request to hold.
Chairman, what Ms. Strauss has and what Dr. Garza has and what Ms. Quinn has and what Mr. Stork have debated here on this amendment is that the employees would only be paid for the hours in which they showed up for the professional development. And the amendment on the table, that is the main amendment, is $254,000, which is, as I said, $127,000 per day for 1,300 employees for 2 days of wages. We are not contemplating hours of wages. We are contemplating the HR and CFO's computation of 2 days of wages that were lost due to the state of emergency by these employees.
By definition, amendment is an amendment because it is different from the motion.
But it does not enumerate
So
a
chair's
payment
ruling-
by hours.
Chair rules that it's not out of order.
I would like to challenge the ruling of the board chair.
I will ask for the vote on the appeal of the chair's ruling. Those in support of the appeal of chair's ruling, raise your hand. Yes.
I just wanted to, I think there is kind of a difference here, but I think I would agree that my questions were answered in a way that wasn't consistent with the way Ms. Strauss' amendment would modify Ms. Schultz's amendment. But I think you still could vote on Ms. Strauss' amendment and have it modify that, and in essence, you would be then creating a situation where you're going to pay them 2 days because that's what it has in it and that's what stays, but that those 2 days would need to be earned through going through professional development. That's not personally, what I was looking for, but that is in fact how could be revised. And I understand that that's a difference from what I heard, but I think so the point is, I think you can amend your amendment from my perspective, Ms. Schultz, but it's different from the responses that I got, which is maybe your point. So.
And the proper motion would be a substitute amendment, not amending my amendment.
It can be done this way too, I think.
Okay, those in favor of Mrs. Schultz's appeal of the chair's ruling, raise your hand. Those opposing? Appeal fails.
Okay, so I'm back to my original questions. So, Ms. Quinn, the benefits that have been talked about this evening that the food service workers receive, that they, find so, pardon the pun, beneficial, do they get those benefits for free?
They pay, the benefits provided to the food service workers are the same benefits provided to all the other full-time employees, so they would have employee shares of those benefits deducted from their pay.
Okay, so the part-time employees who are working hourly still have deducted out of their paycheck contributions on the employee side to pay for, even though it's their full-time benefits that they
Correct.
receive, they still pay for those.
Correct.
Okay.
At the same rate as
so
the others.
Is there any way for you to, is there any average of what the healthcare costs are for an average employee at that level?
The healthcare costs are the same for all employees, no matter what their earnings are. So for a single individual, your deductions could range from $100 to $150 a month, and that would be the same for all employees electing that particular benefit.
So that's for a single employee, and what if they have somebody else on their plan?
Gosh, you're really...
Maybe double that.
Maybe double
so
that.
The point being made is that the employees who have this wonderful benefit of the full-time benefits, in fact, have to pay for them. And it could be $150 to $350 a month that we now are saying we're contemplating not giving them the money for. And I appreciate Ms. McLaughlin's and Ms. Reed's comments of our need to be austere, but we also have a need to lead by example. And when we're in the economy that we're in, I think being good stewards of the money is not making sure that absolutely everybody in the system who was impacted at the top levels received a snow day and sat home and got compensated, from teachers to bus drivers to if custodians couldn't make it in. We're talking about the people who serve our children food and are there every single day and are at the bottom of our pay scale, and who are still, if they want those health benefits, they're going to still have to make those payments. And we heard earlier this evening in forum about the scrambling of HR to try to help some employees stretch out health payments in order to keep their health care. So it's pretty ironic that we're talking about the fact that they have these great benefits, but we have to remember that they have to pay for them. And if they aren't making, their hourly wage, they might not be able to keep them. And clearly we're talking about a one-off situation, are we not, Ms. Quinn? How many times in the last decade have we had this many snow days? Once? So for the second time in a decade, so this is not like this is a recurring theme. This isn't, again, it's not costing us money. Granted, it is savings, but they're the fuel savings that we would have incurred had we transported the kids anyway, and we would have incurred the cost of the food service workers on top of the fuel savings. And so I think this is a win-win.
I have Ms. Hines next.
I guess at this point I would like to just call the question.
Question has been called. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Velkov. All those in favor of calling the question. This is on Mrs. Strauss' amendment. Raise your hand. Okay, that was unanimous. Question's been called. So let me call for the vote on Mrs. Strauss's amendment, which is to amend the amendment by inserting the following additional language. C, directing the superintendent to design a professional development opportunity for school-based food service employees to participate in as a condition of receiving payment for the lost wages based on our continued efforts to encourage students to make healthier food choices and the recommendations of the Food and Nutrition Services study. All those in favor of this motion, raise your hand. Stork, Velkop, Hines, McLaughlin, Moon, Terana, Colfax, Smith, McElvin, Evans, and Strauss opposing. Reed and Schultz. Any abstention? The motion passes. Now we are back. Were you abstaining? No. Okay. Now we are back to Mrs. Schultz's amendment as amended. Is there anybody? Mr. Stork, you want to start? Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to start by saying that I think the efforts are magnificent. I think the intent is appropriate, but I'm not going to be able to support this amendment at this time. I think there's a real opportunity to do professional development for our staff. I think it's probably necessary, probably needed. But what I'd like to do is wait until we hear the report on Monday. We will have an opportunity at that point. We can clearly come back and decide after that presentation, after discussion, after this board considers the value and importance of that professional development to the system, to make that decision. It doesn't require anything special on our part other than considering it at a meeting and voting like we're doing tonight. I think it's a little premature to consider all this at this time. I understand and clearly understand the concern that our employees might have about pay for those days. But that's an experience that a lot of people have had. It's one that I'm sensitive to, but one that we as an organization have to recognize that we have to be careful about. These are agreements. There's special benefits, if you will. There's health benefits that cafeteria workers get that the parent liaisons don't get. There's kind of differences among the different groups, and I would like to see us address those issues overall, and I think we need to do that. But at this point in time, I don't think we can address those larger questions. So again, I'm not going to support this amendment this time. I will be happy to consider that after we've had the presentation on Monday and see what the opportunities are. I think it's very likely that we will need some professional development, and I think it would be a way to spend a limited amount of money to improve the quality of our food and make some improvements. But we need to be careful about every dollar we spend, and this is something that I want to be careful about and make sure that I understand what we're going to spend it for before we approve it. Thank you.
Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment is certainly very well intentioned. It is my understanding that this covers actually only 2 snow days, and the last 2 that have just occurred actually are not covered by this amendment. And while I appreciate the bravery of Mrs. Schultz to carry the case to the state, we're not guaranteed that a waiver would be approved. So my concern is that if we approve this today, Mr. Chairman, we're committing $254,000, and then we're going to come back at some point, I think, and I don't think we would want to be inconsistent if there are a couple of other snow days. So at this point, potentially, we're talking about $508,000. And I think $500,000 potentially is not a place I want to go. So I'm not going to be supporting this. Looks like Dr. Garza would like to be recognized.
Yes, I apologize for interrupting, but I want to make sure that you all have the facts. And I believe, Mr. Velkoff, if I might let Susan correct just a teeny bit of what you just said.
She can correct all of what I said.
There's just a little bit nuance that she needs to add to that to make it very clear. So if you don't mind.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear that the number of days we missed so far that they've lost wages for is in total of 3 days. And that would include going to school through the 24th, because they would have opportunity to make up for the missed day from this past Monday as an added day on the 24th. So they will have an opportunity to make up one of those days. So we're really talking about, at this point, a total of 3 days.
So then it would be between $300,000 and $400,000.
Correct.
Okay.
I have Ms. Hines next.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I so appreciate Ms. Schultz for bringing this up. You know, on the one hand, this feels like we've got it's sort of an ad hoc response to a very unusual situation to take care of our most economically stressed employees. And so I think it's very important for us to think about doing this. The problem is, I don't know that this would be a unique situation. You know, we might face it again. So we have to think about what sort of a precedent we might be setting by doing this, which is why I like Mrs. Strauss's amendment, because I think it gets to the whole a day's pay for a day's work idea. And that is a precedent that I think we can live with going forward. But whether I would support this at all kind of depends on a couple of things. And I had a couple of questions. If this is an adjustment in our third quarter, do we have to spend it by a certain time?
No, just like with any other budgetary item, we're not, any money that we do not, there's no requirement about expending it by a certain time.
Okay.
By the end of this budget year, should we not spend it all, then it falls out in year end. But Susan, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. So my other question was, the roughly $300,000 in fuel savings that we're spending here, if we weren't spending it on this, what other costs have we incurred because of the snow that we might use it for?
Well, our team right now is still working through, because of course our last 2 snow days were just earlier this week. So we've not yet had the opportunity to fully calculate the impact of snow removal and just other impacts, fuel, on the number of snow days we had. So there will be a financial impact to the organization, but we're not prepared just yet to share that with you all. But you're right, Ms. Hines, we will definitely have some impact to consider down the road.
Ms. Hines, are you done? Any other board member on this motion? Mr. Strauss?
I just have a question, because this item has come up because we are voting on the third quarter today. And we don't normally vote on financial budget matters out of sequence. In other words, the opportunity is either at third quarter or year end. So if the board wishes to make this adjustment, it needs to either be made tonight or not until year end. And I'm asking that as a question. I know that is always the way we've done it. We don't open up for budget consideration out of turn. So whether or not people want to do this tonight or not, I don't think we can return to it again until we actually settle the budget in fourth quarter. And I'm asking that as a question, Mr. Chairman.
Are you asking me? Based upon my 15 years experience, it has been that way all along. Whether there is a requirement for us not to deviate, that I do not know. Is there a requirement for us to send this to county by a certain date? so that
at
they
the
can
end
do
of
third
third
quarter?
quarter, but because we are just redirecting resources, the bottom appropriation for the operating fund will not change. So typically, as you mentioned, we have not reopened the budget file until the end of the year, but we have, and we would avoid, I guess, opening the file if we were going to change the bottom line appropriations, because that's what needs to be submitted to the county.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Strauss?
I guess it's just for people to decide how they want to vote on this tonight. We don't normally open it again, and as I say, we're discussing this tonight because it is third quarter, so people have to decide what they want to do.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Strauss?
No, thank you.
Okay. I have a Mrs. McLaughlin and Mr. Schultz.
Ms. Quinn, forgive me, in listening to Ms. Strauss' question, which is the one I had, thinking about what we're voting on tonight, and understanding what Mr. Stork's desire was, which is we're going to have a work session on this on Monday. And I'm trying to reconcile all this because I thought the goal of this extensive discussion was to figure out what we're going to do with any changes to the, with the third quarter, savings that we've realized. So I got to say, I'm actually still a little bit unclear in terms of if we vote down this amendment, then with all this best intentions of trying to address the lost income, do we not revisit this then again until our fourth quarter year end? Do we visit it 2 weeks from now when we have another board meeting? Is this something we can just do as a next step at the work session on Monday? We've invested a lot of time in this discussion tonight. I'd hate to see us have to reopen this issue. I would love to see tonight we do our best work and kind of close this out if we can. So do you understand what I'm asking is that if we're voting tonight on third quarter savings, then when is the most appropriate time if some people wanted to wait until Monday? Should we just...
Obviously, tonight is the most appropriate time to make any adjustments to the budget because this is when we have scheduled third quarter and we have to submit third quarter to the county to get included in the appropriation resolution. Having said that, because we're not changing the bottom line of our appropriations, I do believe we have an option to revisit, but we have to keep in mind if this is something that we would like to do, we have to schedule the day for our food service workers to have come in, and we would really like to anticipate when that day would be so that we could add the wages back into their pay for some of the employees that may not be able to make some of the health deductions. So we're trying to get the pay into their biweekly salaries in time for them to be able to get paid for the 2 full weeks, and that would be sometime around spring break. That would be the best time to be able to add some of the payments back in.
So from a financial standpoint, could we on Monday, after we've had the presentation on food services, make as a next step that we wanted to make these adjustments? Or again, is it what you're trying to say is it's either now or really needing to be doing this properly at the year end?
It would be now, because at year end it would be too late because we would have had completed the fiscal year.
Okay, well, so to my colleagues, it's my advocacy that in listening to Dr. Garza tonight, I feel that what I've heard is that we do see the professional development need here. Yes, we're going to be discussing it on Monday to greater extent. But I got to tell you, as I stepped away from the table, I know Ms. Smith is going to just die to hear me saying this, but this is operations stuff. I got to tell you, I love being here to advocate for our community. But wow, when you think about the work we've got to do, you guys, we're talking about $250,000. And if we think this is the right thing to do, and our superintendent, who we believe in, is saying, here's how we can do this and still benefit the community, and benefit the system by having these professional days, then can we just support this and move forward? Because I don't want to drag this out any longer, and I trust the superintendent to operate her school system.
I have Mrs. Schultz next, and then Mrs. Reed.
In a way, nicely said, Ms. McLaughlin. I'm flummoxed. I'll pick one of my favorite words that this would take this long. But given that we've amended with C and added this in, again, with another description of how this professional development day would go, you have to schedule a time for people who are already part-time workers to come and work when they're not scheduled to work in order to receive the professional development. So I'm not exactly sure how that will work and now how much is being contemplated by this amendment. Because if they come for 1 hour of professional development and they get 1 hour of pay when the intent was to restore them so that they could do things like pay their health care bills, then I can't support the amendment because it's been so undercut and so, gutted. I don't want to pay people to work 1 hour by coming and receiving some professional development for like a speech or I don't know what. I don't even see. It was so nebulous and so unclear, and we didn't even know until at the table that you were talking about an hour for hour. I don't even know what they're going to be remunerated for and what the total cost is. So,
I didn't hear hour for hour, but if a doctor superintendent, if he could clarify that.
Ms. Schultz, I just want to reassure you, we've heard the conversation. I think we're clear on the intent of the board, and I regret that we're unable to tell you about the specifics of it tonight, but we are clear about what the intent is, and we'll make it high quality, and we'll design it in such a way that is aligned with those intentions.
I appreciate that. I'm glad you know what the intent of the board is, because I sure as heck can't figure it out from what we've done tonight. We took a very simple motion that said we're going to treat the employees who lost pay. They have time at the end of the year to make up the days that we just lost. We have two known lost days for sure, and turned it into something almost unrecognizable.
Mrs. Reed, to be followed by Mr. McElveen.
Wow, who would have guessed that this conversation would have gone on this long? I have a few questions here and comment. The comment first, and that is that the superintendent and Ms. Quinn didn't bring this up as a priority. So I guess I wonder, are we kind of working backwards? In other words, what is it that we're really trying to solve here? Is it that, boy, this training and development is really critical and therefore we've got to fund it with this savings? No. I think what I'm hearing is that we feel bad that some people didn't get paid for not working. And so we're trying to figure out a way to pay them without just handing them the money. I think, just to boil it right down there, I think that's what it is, right? But so the professional development really is almost a one-off. It's something that, yes, is nice to do, and I don't know, glancing at the report and after getting briefed by Ms. Quinn, I didn't hear that was like an absolute critical item to do this professional development for these staff. So that's one question I have is, how urgent is this? Yes, of course, it's a nice thing to do, but again, is this like something that's critical, and on Monday, are we going to hear that, boy, you're going to have to amend your report, because I don't see it jumping out at me saying, boy, this is something that, these folks really need. So that's my first question. Is it really urgent, or is it kind of a nice thing that we could do to solve this issue that we've brought to you?
Well, I will tell you that I recall in the Prismatic report that there was recommendation for training within the report. Specifically, I recall that in terms of making sure that there's consistency with the quality of the way that some of the recipes are done throughout the system, if you'll remember. So there's always, I mean, if you follow the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their requirements are so prescriptive and so specific, and food, the way in which our schools have to deal with inspections. So there's always a need for training. Would we have worked on that right now at this time? Probably. They've had training this year, and I'm sure there was a plan for that. So the first point you made is true. But is there a need that we can use that money, restore our employees at the same time while benefiting the overall system? I think, as Ms. McLaughlin put earlier, I think the answer to that is yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that response. And my other question is for Mr. Plattenberg, and that is something that Ms. Hines alluded to, and that is, I know you're still computing the costs for the snow days, but just to give us a sense overall, I mean, do you have some room in your budget that you anticipate things like the snow days, and will you be able to, in essence, absorb that within your existing funding, or because we've had so many snow days, is that going to cause you to kind of, have to pull money from somewhere else? I'm trying to get a sense for, with this $250,000 in fuel savings, is that going to be just completely surpassed by a huge expenditure for the snow removal?
Unfortunately, I can't give you any further clarity. I know it's been pretty fluid. It's been pretty significant this year. We're working with financial services to ascertain what that is right now. Anytime that the CFO says that she thinks she can work $250,000, $300,000 out, I'm supportive of that. So.
Okay, thank you. Clear as mud, but thank you.
Mr. McElveen.
So once again, a night of great work. But I have to say, I agree with Mr. Stork. It is very frustrating to have this discussion here tonight when we don't have the staff report on the food stuff. Some of this money I might want to put toward fruit and vegetable bars, but we haven't even discussed them. So I think this is a bad move to take. I'm probably going to vote for it because I think it would help our employees. But in the future, I hope we don't do this again.
Any other board member who hasn't spoken on this amendment? Before I do go backs, I have a couple of go backs. I have a Mr. Stork and Mrs. Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a little bit different perspective. I'm not sure why we're even having this discussion about allocating third quarter review money, because when the budget was developed for food and nutrition services, I understand that we projected X number of hours and days that they would be working. Ms. Quinn, can you help me with this? So the cost of these wages are already in the F&S budget. Is that correct?
That's correct, but you have to keep in mind we're also losing revenue in the F&S budget. So unless the revenue comes in, the budget will have to be reduced. So you got to keep in mind the budget is only as good as having enough revenues to support that budget. So we're losing food sales in those days that we're not making up. So that's why the funding is being recommended out of the operating fund rather than food and nutrition services fund.
Okay. In this third quarter review, I'm going to keep on this issue for a moment. It says there are no changes in this fund. That we're getting ready to consider and approve the third quarter changes, and it says in the changes that there's no change in this fund, the F&S fund. I'm looking at what's in the document we're getting ready to approve. So if we're not changing anything in it, and we have either losses or gains as a result of either employees not being paid or revenue that's decreased, then if there has to be a change in that, how will that change occur?
The change will be at the end of the year when you actually see the actual results of the revenues and expenditures within that fund. So what you see currently in the budget statements are your projected. So you're correct.
Right.
We did not recommend any changes because at this point, it was, we weren't able to determine exactly how much of the loss that we are going to be experiencing. But that loss will show up when you go to the end of the year, when you see the actual revenues coming in against expenditures. And because the Food and Nutrition Services Fund within the last year and this year and going into 2015 is going to be experiencing some challenges, so we're actually going into the reserve to be able to fully support the operations, and with some of the recommendations that we will be implementing as a result of the study that will be presented on Monday, we feel there will be some additional pressures on the fund. So in order to support this particular amendment, we were recommending that the operating fund be able to support the lost wages for the food service workers.
But if we chose, as a board, to do something different, we equally have that in our purview to make a decision next week, next month, 2 months from now. If we want to allocate money differently or not even choose to allocate doing anything, just wait until the year end and make those adjustments as needed, that's clearly something that's within our ability to do. So it doesn't necessarily require a decision tonight, even though that might be preferable to at least identify that potential additional cost, but we don't even know, potentially don't even know what that cost is. So I'm coming back to the original question, which was frustrating to me to hear, that the implication that somehow we needed to act on this tonight or we couldn't act on it. And I just want to be sure that in my mind, misimpression isn't left with the board. So if there's any disagreement with that, Ms. Quinn or Dr. Garza, please share that with us. Okay, thank you.
I have Ms. Evans before I go to Mrs. Strauss. We'll go back. Ms. Evans.
I have a very basic question. If we don't pass this amendment tonight, does the superintendent have the authority to make up work hours, to have the food service workers make up their hours in some other way? Could we just do that? Could you do that?
I believe the answer to that's no, because of where the money's coming from.
What if the money were to come from the Food and Nutrition Fund?
There is the ability within the Food and Nutrition Fund for extra hours to be accumulated, but as was pointed out, there's not the revenue in that fund to cover this.
So if we don't approve this, it won't happen?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, Susan? Yes.
Thank you.
Mrs. Strauss.
On page 5 of the food nutrition study response, there's a section on professional development, which has 5 recommendations for professional development, which I suspect we will discuss on Monday, but clearly there are many requirements and opportunities for further professional development for our food nutrition services workers. So it's there.
Mrs. Smith.
Yeah, I have to say that I keep changing my mind back and forth hearing my different colleagues speak, but there's one thing that I feel really adamant about is that we need to make this decision tonight. I would not support opening this up at a later time to do it. I think you get into some dangerous precedents when we do that. This is the budget review, and I think we need to make the decision now. So if anybody else has other wise words of wisdom to help me decide what to do, but I very strongly believe we need to make this decision tonight.
Mr. Schultz.
I'm just going to point out that in the original email that I provided to all my colleagues with all the background information that frankly was probably needed in order to address this, and which I solicited questions through and got none, I made mention of the fact that we've done this once before. We've done this once before as a board. I believe it was maybe 2008 or 2010. So it's not unprecedented, and that Ms. Quinn specifically asked for it to occur in conjunction with the action on the third quarter, because it's best to pay them an approximate pay period, and that it's best for finance to do this, for example, in a pay period over spring break when they wouldn't be receiving payment anyway. So she's already addressed the operational implementation of this, and if there were any questions, that information was provided in advance.
Mr. Narcofax.
I'm like Ms. Smith. I'm vacillating still how I'm going to do this. But I have to say, as when we talk about things, and I know some of my colleagues who are very into the strategic approach as well, I feel this isn't allowing us to operate strategically. We are putting before, when we talk about professional development, we're really unclear what kind, what amount. While it is defined in page 5 that we need it, we haven't had a board discussion as to what level. So that's why I'm struggling with this decision to move in a fashion that is logical and sensible. I understand the need to make this decision tonight to stay within the parameters of the way we typically use our third quarter monies, which we have to move forward. But I feel, again, strategically, if we look at this, it is an undefined type of professional development at this point. It is, we're just not certain what the needs are, and we're doing this a little bit out of context. I think once we have that conversation, if this is something we do, we can talk about it as we move forward into the next budget year, and it's something we can do in a much more strategic fashion.
Mrs. McLaughlin.
Here's what I hope will convince my colleagues on what to do at this point. We trust our superintendent. Board members very thoughtfully brought concerns to her on this issue, and she came up with a solution to address the multiple concerns that exist here. Lost compensation for employees, and the fact that we know, based on the report, on a very expensive consulting report, that we have some professional development needs. I don't know what Dr. Breeden and her professional development team do with the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of professional development hours they do for employees. God help the 12 board members here if we start digging down to whether we think the professional development is meaningful, substantive, whatever. So I really do hope that staying at the macro level, and please know, I love that Ms. Dearnach-Kofax is trying to say, where are we on this? But look, stay at the macro level, everybody. We want to look at a win-win. This is what we know. We know we need it. Trust Dr. Garza to basically create the professional development that's needed to address what's already in the consultant's report. We don't need to micromanage all the way down to that level. We don't need to have this further discussion on Monday, because quite honestly, we already know what the consultants already told us. So can we please consider supporting this moving forward? And my final point would be, if Dr. Garza didn't support or believe in the need for professional development, she is such a strong leader, she'd flat out tell us, look, I appreciate your soft hearts and your concern for all the employees, but I don't see this as strategic. She has come forward working with board members to say, here's a great way to address these mutual concerns that you've got. Support this, and let's move on to the rest of our business tonight.
Anybody else on this? Mr. Falcott.
Sorry to do this. So I apologize for scrambling the numbers in my earlier comment, but I think we got that cleared up. But in any event, we are still talking about 2 to 3 positions, as Ms. McLaughlin noted earlier. And, it is discretionary spending at a time where next year we're proposing to cut an ESPIT and an assistant principal in some of our smaller schools. And that could be paid for by the money that we would save by not spending this.
Okay, let me call for the vote. I just thought about saying a few things, but I'm going to refrain. Just call for the vote on the amendment as amended. So motion is to amend the main motion as amended. That doesn't sound right. Anyway, you know what you're talking about. We are voting on the amendment as amended. Decreasing the funding for bus fuel by $254,000 in recognition of a savings resulting from the 6 missed days of school due to weather that will not be made up. B, redirecting those savings to provide 2 days of lost wages for school-based food service employees as a result of school closures due to weather. And C, directing the superintendent to design a professional development opportunity for school-based food service employees to participate in as a condition of receiving payment for the lost wages based on our continued efforts to encourage students to make healthier food choices and the recommendations of the Food and Nutrition Services study. All those in favor of this motion, raise your hand. Strauss, Evans, Schultz, McElveen, Moon, and McLaughlin. Those opposing? Smith, Fairfax, Hines, Reed, Velkov, and Stork. The motion failed. Now we'll go back to the main motion. Main motion, anybody wants to speak on the main motion? Sure. Okay, now I gotta find the main motion. The motion on the table is to move that school board approve revenue and expenditure adjustments as reflected in the FY 2014 third quarter budget review and as detailed in the agenda item. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Strauss, Evans, McElveen, Smith, Fairfax, Moon, Hines, Reed, Velkov, Stork. Those opposing? McLaughlin with Mr. Schultz away from the table. The motion passes. Next action item is award of a contract, tenant build out Eastern Fairfax Elementary Schools Bailey's project. Let me call on Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the school board award the contract for the Eastern Fairfax Elementary School Bailey's tenant build-out project to John C. Grimberg Company, Incorporated, in the amount of $10,600,000 and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Strauss. Ms. Evans, you want to speak on your motion?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The community knows we are moving forward to create our new campus for the Bailey's Elementary School on Route 7, our first vertical school campus in Fairfax County. I want to particularly applaud the excellent work of for this unique project to Assistant Superintendent Jeff Plattenberg and his awesome facilities staff. They've done an excellent job, as well as Cluster Assistant Superintendent Douglas Tyson and, of course, Bailey's Principal Marie Lemon. They have been working very, very hard and to bring this to fruition in the fall. So it's going well, and this is the next step in making this unique project a reality. As I wanted to just recap where we are, anyone who wants to look on our website, it's on the FCPS homepage. It's the first item under continuing interest. There's a wealth of information there with frequently asked questions about the facility, about the outside, about safety and security, about the instruction, and transportation. There's not much there right now about the transportation piece. We're still working on what we plan to do in terms of the bell schedules and in terms of the routes. But there's a wealth of information. There's also an opportunity for people to ask other questions that they may have about this project, and we're happy to be sure and get those answered. This facility is intended as a Bailey's only solution. It will house the 3rd to 5th graders at this campus. The K through 2 will remain at the original site. This is critical to dealing with the increasing overcrowding at Bailey's Elementary School, where we have more than 1,300 students and 19 trailers, where so many of our students now are in trailers. So this is critical to get this finished and open. We will soon be getting a name for the campus, both the first campus and the second campus. There will be a community meeting with the parents and the students next week, where the students have been brought into the conversation, and they're going to bring us some recommendations on what the name of the school, the first part campus and the second campus will be. The one requirement is that it have the name Bailey's in it. And parents are also going to bring us their recommendations, and we'll have a community meeting where we will make a decision. The civic associations, the surrounding civic associations, are also being asked to send a representative, and if they have their own ideas, they are welcome to bring them up on the floor and join us in that conversation. So at the same time, that name will be put on as new business for March 20th. And then we, as a board, will vote on the name on April 10th. So stay tuned for the new name of this school. So I appreciate, again, all the work that's been done on this, and I ask my colleagues to support this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Mrs. Strauss?
Yes, I was very pleased to second this motion. It has been many years of searching to relieve the tremendous overcrowding at Bailey's, and I am very proud of the work of this board, and especially the work of our staff and Mr. Plattenberg and Mr. Sneed and everybody else. This, I think, is an interesting example of a community hard at work to find an unusual solution to a problem that had to be solved. And I am excited. I think this will be a lovely school, and I think that staff has done a great job answering all the questions that the community has had. And I look forward to opening the school in September, and as an example of perhaps solutions that we will find for other parts of the community as Fairfax County urbanizes. So thank you to everyone who has worked so hard on this. Thank you, Dr. Garza. I know that you have come up with some interesting instructional approaches for this school, so that I think we have solved the problems. And I still remember the night I voted to turn Bailey's into a magnet school, so I'm very pleased to now be able to provide a second school building for these lovely children and their teachers. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I want to thank you for your hard work, your advocacy for the Bailey's community. I sort of was hoping that they would name the second campus after your name, Evans, but I guess not. So now the motion that we will be voting on is that school board award the contract for Eastern Fairfax Elementary School tenant build-out project to John C. Greenberg Company Incorporated in the amount of $10,600,000 and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. The vote is unanimous. The motion passes. With Mrs. Church away from the table. The next, we have a confirmation of action taken in the closed meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where the board will confirm any action regarding issues that were discussed in the closed meeting. These issues may include action taken regarding students who have been recommended for expulsion by the division superintendent. Board members have discussed each individual case, and at this time will make several motions to confirm the recommended action. I have motion from Mrs. Strauss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to expel a student for possession of illegal drugs with the intent to distribute at school.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Smith. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Strauss, Evans, McElveen, Smith, Derna, Fairfax, Moon, Hines, Reed, Velkop, Stork. Opposing, abstaining is McLaughlin with Mrs. Schultz away from the table. The motion passes. We have a committee report. Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I served as chairman of a 3-member hearing committee along with Ms. Evans and Ms. Hines, and I moved to expel a student for possession of illegal drugs with the intent to distribute at school. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been second. All those in favor, signify by raising your hand. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stork. Now we'll go to the consent agenda. Our adopted rules of parliamentary procedure, Robert's rules, provide for a consent agenda, listing several items for approval of the board by a single motion. Most of the items listed under the consent agenda have gone through board committee review and recommendation. Documentation concerning these items has been provided to all board members and the public in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the meeting. 5.01, approve the minutes of February 20, 2014 regular school board meeting. 5.02, adopt a resolution honoring Louis Archer Elementary School 75th anniversary. 5.03, award the contract for the Woodson High School re-roofing project to the lowest responsible bidder, Orndorff and Spade, Incorporated, in the amount of $153,785. A contract for the Flint Hill Elementary School re-roofing project to the lowest responsible bidder, Function Enterprises Incorporated, in the amount of $759,400. A contract for the Cameron Elementary School re-roofing project to the lowest responsible bidder, Orndorff Spade Incorporated, in the amount of $323,119. And authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Is there any objection to approving the consent agenda? Having a hearing and seeing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we have a new business. The following are new business agenda items. There will not be a vote tonight on these items, but action is scheduled at a future meeting. 6.01, approve the alternative accreditation plan request for Key Center, Kilmer Center, Mountain View Alternative High School, Bryan Alternative High School, and Fairfax Adult High School for submission to Virginia Board of Education as detailed in the agenda item. 6.02, award the contract for the Hybla Valley Elementary School Kitchen Addition Project to the lowest responsible bidder, and authorize the division superintendent or the assistant superintendent of facilities and transportation services to execute and administer the contract on behalf of the school board. Superintendent matters, Dr. Garza.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As was stated earlier by Will Ash, our hearts and our thoughts go out to the Woodson High School community. They've been through a lot, and we stand with them. And we look forward to working with them as we respond and do everything we can to support our students. And with that being said, it gives me great pleasure to acknowledge that they were selected as by the National Band Association. The Woodson High School Band has been selected, and the director, Melinda McKenzie Hall, to receive the National Programs of Excellence Blue Ribbon Award. It's a very distinguished award. The association pointed out that Woodson's program stands out as an example of one that strives to create a quality educational environment for students. Woodson High School is a great school, and there's lots of wonderful things going on there. With regard to the Board of Supervisors, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them for allowing the conversation to continue around our budgetary needs, and we look forward to working with them in the coming months as we think about the future of our school system and what we can do best for our children. And then finally, many of you, or several of you, were with us last week when we were at Hayfield Secondary School, where we had very exciting surprise announcement that one of our teachers there, Elizabeth Galinas, received the $25,000 Milken Family Foundation National Educator Award, and it was an incredible event. very exciting. Over 3,000 students in the gym for that surprise announcement. And it's just always so affirming and certainly wonderful to see an outstanding educator recognized for their great work. Pat Wright was there, and of course Mike Milken, who's the co-founder of the Milken Foundation, was there for the surprise announcement. And I will tell you, they both repeatedly said to me, and I agreed with them, and of course, this is Miss Darnette Kovac's school. I know she was very proud. The student body was just so impressive, and in fact, Pat Wright and Mike Milken said the most well-behaved and attentive group of students they've ever seen. And so anyway, we were very, very proud to know that Elizabeth Galinas is one of only 39 Virginia educators to ever be awarded this distinctive award. So we're very proud of her. It was a proud day for Hayfield Secondary School, and it was certainly a proud day for FCPS. So thank you. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Garza. Next, we have a report. And let me first go to Pat Hines for the PEC Public Engagement Committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moon, Public Engagement Committee met last week, and we talked about a few things. First, we got an early look at the new interface with the community, and we want to thank the Department of Communications for that. Now, you know, when you go to our website and email, right now your email just kind of goes and actually goes to a place where people have to actually take a look at it and figure out where it should go. So I think there's there will be a new, not yet though, right? Though pretty soon. Do we know when that will come online?
We're going to make a few more tweaks, so sometime soon, though.
Sometime soon, okay. And the idea is so that when you email the school system now, you will answer a few questions and check a few boxes, and then your email will get more quickly to the person who can answer it best. So we were very happy to be able to take a look at that and make some recommendations. Other things we talked about, we did make some changes to our public engagement and communications plan, and we also wanted to remind school board members that you need to remind your students that mock forum topics are due on March 10th. Okay, so talk to your student if you haven't seen the topic yet. We want to be able to talk about them with our students before March 13th. These are our student interns. And I just have one other thing I wanted to, okay, well, sorry, my computer's slow. Everybody just take a breath. Thank you.
I guess mine is not the only one.
I don't know what's going on with board docs. Oh, here we go. Well, never mind. All right. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hines. Let me call on Ms. Diana Colfax from the forum.
Prior to this meeting, we held a forum this evening, and we discussed two topics. The first one was the topic was restructuring the decision-making process for weather delays and cancellation of schools. After much discussion, we had the initial desired outcome was to refer it to a work session. At this point, we had asked to instead refer it to the superintendent to look at this, as she has already been working with this and facilities to make some changes based upon some of the things that we have had after the multitude of weather delays. So we'll look forward to an update from her shortly. The second item, which we talked about, was basically the CIP, and basically we had wanted to bring to another work session information on the CIP. There were 4 objectives that were talked about: prioritization of renovation with capacity and new schools, boundary changes, the queue and the current criteria for setting up that queue, and an analysis of current capacity. And so what we had agreed to was to take probably at least 2 of these objectives, because that's quite a comprehensive list that was there, to bring to a work session in April, with the opportunity to bring the other objectives at a later work session, depending on how that session goes in April.
Thank you. Next, we have a board matters. I'm going to start with Mr. Stork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry for the delay there. Just a couple notes. First, I wanted to also thank the Board of Supervisors for really preserving the options for fully funding FCPS. That is an achievement compared to previous years. We've not really been in this position, and I think there's a genuine interest and concern on their part that recognizes that our budgets have been funded at a lower level over the past few years, that we've gotten behind. And while we've made in my mind, some huge cuts on our budget that I think will be very painful for all to feel over the next year, they also understand that they need to provide more than what they've been able to do in the past. So I'm hoping that we can get fully funded from them, and I guess we'll see. We continue to need everybody to get out and let your Board of Supervisor member know your feelings about the budget and schools in general. It's sure appreciated. I know we've had a lot of folks doing that, and it's clearly welcomed. I would also add quickly that our state senators and delegates have a similar kind of issue from our perspective. We clearly need to make sure that they follow through in the cost to compete funding that we're looking for, as well as the recognition that for these many past years, they have been underfunding our schools. Our level still is below what it was in 2008. And as a final note, and most of us recognize this, particularly in public education, that Virginia funds its schools at a level below that of almost any other states in the country, especially relative to its wealth. So we know that they can do more, and we appreciate and we look for them to do more. It will make a difference for our kids. Final note, I had the opportunity this past week to visit one of my schools, and in particular as Abe Lincoln, which is one of my pleasures. And I wanted to thank the folks at Washington Mill Elementary School, all the kindergartners there that I had the opportunity to meet with, and they provided me with this hat and lots of wonderful cards inside, which are always carefully written and drawn, and clearly it's a joy to be part of my day. I particularly, in appearing in front of them, you forget sometimes where we are in our world. We spend so much time around the dais here talking about things that maybe are important, but still don't really get to the heart of why we're here. And when you stand up in front of a group of kids and you're interacting, especially with kindergartners, who their view of reality is a lot different than yours, and the kinds of questions and kind of interchanges you have really brings you back to what education and what learning is all about. And I'm appreciative of the opportunity to be there and spend that time with them, and for them to teach me about why we do what we do and how much it can make a difference. So thank you.
Mr. Backup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Mr. Stork, I want to express my appreciation to the Board of Supervisors for their action this week in signaling their willingness to have a dialogue over the next, I guess, about 8 weeks about the budget, certainly in the next 4 weeks when the public hearings will happen. In particular, what comes to mind, obviously, Chairman Bulova bringing forward a proposal to increase the advertised tax rate, at least for discussion. And I think that was taken very positively by folks in the school community who just wanted to make sure that the dialogue continued. I thought Supervisor McKay made great points about education funding in the state, and I think that we all want to work with him going forward in doing a much better job of getting more funds from the Commonwealth. Supervisor Harity brought forward some creative ideas. I don't know if I can, I have to look at the accounting principles, but it makes me want to go back and look at the accounting principles pretty well, but I appreciate his suggestion in that sense. Supervisor Cook also talked about the need for strategic budgeting, and I thought those were very helpful comments. And then finally, Supervisor Fry talked about bringing the meals tax to a referendum, and I think I'm not going to comment any on that, but that may come up perhaps in the work session next Monday. So I just want to communicate to everybody in the community and to the supervisors that we remain partners. We are all committed here As we heard from the supervisors saying to us, you know, we all want the best quality of life for everybody here in Fairfax County. Obviously, we have a responsibility to argue for the best school system that we can achieve, and we know that they do too. And there may be some bumps along the way, but I'm very confident that we're going to arrive at a safe landing, a soft landing in our budget negotiations over the next few weeks.
Continue on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple shout outs to some of the Oakton sports teams. The Oakton girls swim and dive won their second straight Virginia title. And Oakton senior Jack Stoney won the state title in the boys 1600 meter race, and he also won last fall the state cross country championship. Also wanted to congratulate Joanne Hammermeister and the Real Food for Kids organization. Many of us are aware of, but maybe the public wasn't, that she actually participated in an event at the White House last week was the keynote speaker for the 4th anniversary of the Let's Move initiative by the First Lady, so that was very exciting. Wanted to also let you know, speaking of food, yes, it is almost time for another meal. We've been here a while. But the second annual Culinary Challenge is March 13th at 4 o'clock at Falls Church High School, and 5 of our 7 academy programs will be competing. Also, Supervisor Smith and I are holding our community budget meeting on March 18th at 7 o'clock at the Dunn-Loring Administrative Center, and I encourage people to come out. Usually there's just a stalwart gang of just a handful of people, but I'm hopeful that this year we have raised awareness and people will come to the meeting and gain information and also tell us what they're thinking about the budget. And last but not least, I wanted to mention that I met with 2 school psychologists who live and work in my district, and I think many of us have had visits from the school psychologists telling us about their workload and the amount of stress that they feel just trying to anticipate and deal with the number of students who have challenges these days. I think they said the ratio was 1 to 1,500 students, which is incredible to me. And they just said they just can't be proactive enough. And in that regard, I know that we'll be talking further about mental health issues, and also wanted to mention that I was at Woodson High School this week with several of my colleagues, and 1,100 community members came to unite and express our sympathies to families who've lost, but also to work together to try to improve our services across the county to all of our students and families. So it was a very difficult situation, but I appreciated the staff words and comments. Sometimes there are no words, but I felt that that it was comforting to people that we're trying to do more and trying to understand more. And it was really quite an event, and I was glad to be there. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On Sunday, I got to participate in the Peace Education Awards. This is a group of community volunteers who, for the last several years, have awarded students, high school students here in Fairfax County, with an award for being peacemakers in their schools. And it's all kinds of different things that the students have done themselves, and they are nominated by someone at their school. These students build community in their schools in many ways. They see a need for better communication and better support for their fellow students, and they move to do it. And they are great examples for the rest of us. So I was very happy to be included in that. And on last Saturday, I want to thank Supervisor Kathy Hudgens for setting up the Hunter Mill Community Summit out at Frying Pan Park, and all the residents who came out and joined us and who spoke there. It was a great morning of learning more about the county, And I want to thank Supervisor Hudgens for always being a friend of the schools, for her budget support this year and over the years. I know I can count on her. And I think, she also understands that there are lots of needs in the county. And I think she said at the Board of Supervisors meeting the other day that the 2-cent increase was a no-brainer for her, and I agree with her. I think she recognizes that there are a lot of needs, and we have to just start filling them. Also last Friday, I watched the Louise Archer Wolf Trap Elementary School staff basketball game at James Madison High School. That was a lot of fun. My favorite moment was the trick play, I think they called it the Giant, where one teacher actually climbed up on the shoulders of another teacher and did an alley-oop, got 2 points. It was very impressive, yes. And speaking of Louise Archer, tomorrow, Louise Archer will celebrate their 75th anniversary. This is a school in Vienna that actually has been around longer than that. I guess this is the official anniversary of the school opening where it is right now on Nutley Street, but even back in the late 1800s, it was originally called the Vienna Colored School. These was the bad old days when schools were segregated. And if you've been to the Vienna post office, you may notice right next door to the post office, or I think 2 doors down, is a church. And in the basement of that church is where the school was originally held. So this is a living history for the students at Louise Archer. The teachers there do a great job of keeping that history alive for the students. Tomorrow afternoon there will be an event, and then again in the evening, a community gathering. So I'll be happy to see everybody tomorrow there.
Mrs. McLaughlin.
When I think about what I wanted to touch on tonight, I can't believe what a busy couple of weeks it's been, but especially really just in the last week. So I wanted just to highlight a few things. First of all, I want to echo my words of appreciation that my colleagues have shared with the Board of Supervisors in their 8-2 vote to advertise a 2-cent increase to the tax rate. It really will allow our 2 boards to continue working together as we identify the needs of the school and the needs of the other county services here in Fairfax. I know that everyone on this board wants to be very mindful of any increase in taxes to our community. But I also want to emphasize again, we are very blessed to live in one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. We have tried to weather recession, and we are now trying to ensure that we protect the quality of services that make this such an attractive place to live. And so I really look forward to partnering with our Board of Supervisors, with our superintendent, the executive, county executive, Ed Long, and really hopefully coming through this budget with some win-win decisions for our schools and our county. The second thing I wanted to highlight was my deep appreciation to Dr. Dockery. She really pulled a Herculean effort this past week with her staff. For those of you who don't know, they held, I believe it was their 9th annual Special Education Summit. It was outstanding. It was hosted at Woodson. I believe there was probably over 1,000 people there, 2,000 people there. And if there was 2,000, that means we filled 2,000 in the other night too. It was just remarkable. And I wanted Dr. Dockery and Dr. Garza to know that not only did I enjoy staying for the entire conference and learned so much, but the response I heard from the community who was there was that this was so professional and so substantive that people were remarking that you can go to essentially a day-long conference for free and leave with knowledge and information that make us better parents, better teachers, better staff, exceptional work. And please extend my gratitude to all those involved. I look forward to it again next year. But the reason I wanted to emphasize Dr. Dockery's efforts in all of this is not only is that incredible to have over 2,000 people coming to a conference like this, but on top of all of that, she marshaled her department to come together, again, working with Dr. Garza, to quickly pull together an incredible community meeting last night at Woodson High School. That was a standing room only. So the size of that auditorium is, how much do we know fits in there? Yeah, so it was well over 1,100 people there. I also want to express my appreciation to the Woodson faculty who were there in strong numbers, also to show support to our families. For those of you who have been following this is tragically now 6 students that Woodson has lost in 3 years. And I am so grateful that not only has, as Dr. Garza said, the community is standing strong with Woodson, but through Dr. Garza's leadership, the Woodson community knows that we are going to be supported, that there will be efforts from this school system to really help us understand what's been happening and how we can continue to help Woodson, which is such a wonderful high school, find some answers and really come through this. But the turnout last night at the Woodson community reminded me of why our motto is Woodson Strong. And I was really proud of everyone being there last night. And I especially want to also thank the community stakeholders who came out in support. We had, individuals from the county agencies, public health services. We had the Active Minds organization at Woodson. We had the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention there. Just an incredible array of services there last night, all to demonstrate all that we have here in Fairfax County to make us stronger as a system and also for our students. I also want to emphasize for my colleagues who don't know this, the Annandale High School PTA came together and provided a full meal for all of the Woodson faculty in advance of last night's meeting. So here we had the Woodson staff who worked a long day, stayed so they could be part of the community meeting, and the Annandale PTA came forward and provided a wonderful full meal, and that really touched the Woodson staff deeply, and I'm going to let Kathy Ryan, the PTA president, know how much that meant. I also heard other schools like Madison reached out, sent flowers to the Woodson community to say that they're thinking of us and they're there in support. So it means a lot to the Woodson community to know how supported we are by our schools. I want to emphasize something that's on a positive note. Very happy in the midst of some of the sadness. Both the Woodson boys and the Lake Braddock boys basketball team faced off against each other in the regional championship. Woodson prevailed after 4 meetings of playing this season, but both teams will advance now to the state finals in basketball. They will play tomorrow and Saturday evening. Lake Braddock tomorrow night down in Richmond, Woodson Saturday at Robinson for the state semifinals. And as someone who represents both schools, I'm hoping for dual wins so that these 2 incredible teams can face off in the state championship that will be on March 14th. I also want to just thank the Cardinal Forest Elementary School for inviting me to my very first Read Across America event. That was a great deal of fun, and those kindergartners really excited me about their passion for learning, and they got to read 4 books, and they still stayed focused and enjoyed it. And so with that, I just want to again extend to my colleagues as well. Thank you for the support you have been showing our Woodson community. It is deeply appreciated, and I know that we will continue to heal.
Mr. Kovacs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This week, as I mentioned in Spotlight in Learning, it was actually last week, my colleague Ms. Smith and I, we attended the Washington Area Boards of Education, otherwise known as WABE, meeting down the road in Falls Church. As I spoke, we talked about STEM education, and I think I've shared that all with you, the presentation that we got there. We also talked about budget challenges, and we also got an update on what's going on in Richmond. So it's a very good meeting where we can talk about what we're all seeing in the Washington area, and a great deal of the conversation at that point focused on budget challenges, and we're all seeing very much the same thing, unfortunately, right now still. But it's good to know as you share strategies and comments with individuals about what they're seeing and the way they're progressing in that area. As Dr. Garza also mentioned, it was wonderful for me to see Miss Elizabeth Galinas, the Hayfield secondary teacher, receive that award from the Milken National Education Foundation. It was $25,000. It was a surprise. It was exciting, and it was one of those events, as Dr. Garza said, is quite, really one of those events where you just realize this is what we're all here for. And she was amazing, and she was so adorable. She kept saying to everybody, "I'm a hugger," and she was just, she just was hugging everybody, and so emotive and so very humble in the way she approached this, and she was very honored by this. So we were all proud to support her and be there for her. I also want to thank Dr. Dockery and her staff for, again, putting on the terrific special education conference last Saturday. I attended, and as always, as a parent and as a school board member, I get a lot out of that. Thank them also for their work with the Woodson community this week. And finally, I do want to thank the Board of Supervisors for allowing us to continue the dialogue, and we are continuing to hope for full funding, and we look forward to working with you over the next few weeks to see that that happens.
The Sully District Town Hall budget meeting will be March 27 at 7 p.m. at Rocky Run Middle School, and that will be hosted by Mike Fry and myself, and also the Sully District Council. So I hope people will come out. You get to hear the county perspective and the Fairfax Public Schools perspective about the budget, and I'd love to have a lot of people there. Thank you.
So first of all, the town of Vienna a couple weeks ago lost Mayor Jane Seaman, who's always been a big supporter of the schools, and we did want to thank her and her family for their support. I know Miss Reed and I were most recently with her on Veterans Day at the Flint Hill Veterans Day celebration, and she said, "Man, I always love coming to this. It gives me such energy." So we will miss Jane. Secondly, congratulations to Dr. Garza on finishing her listening tour. We are very proud of her for finishing it off well in Braddock. And I know Chris Donahue is ready to schedule another tour, right, Chris? But again, congratulations. I always look forward to attending some basketball games with my official photographer, Mr. Moon. Look forward to doing so again this weekend, and congratulations to Woodson for advancing. And finally, thank you to Miss Smith for this wonderful, very appropriate birthday card. And thank you also to Miss Reed for a very nice decadent cake. Thank you all.
So I am very grateful to Marianne Penarelli, Kim Dockery, Dr. Garza, all of the community advocates who pulled together for a very touching and, as Dr. Dockery said, first conversation with the Woodson community. And I really want to thank a number of the student leaders, particularly young men, who I had just great conversation with. And that's the way that I see forward, is just the incredible intuitiveness of the young people within the Woodson community to be student leaders, whether they're involved with that program or not. Second of all, the special education conference, I'm not quite sure how we're going to keep doing this because we keep topping ourselves, and you set new expectations and they keep being exceeded. Standing room only, 2,000 people, as an estimate, and delivering such needed information. And if anything was ever an example of how important special education is to the stakeholders in this county, that conference certainly speaks very clear. So anytime that we're dealing with this and we're speaking on this issue, when 2,000 people show up, for their own time to look at the work that we're doing and the tools that we're delivering to them. You should be proud of yourself, Dr. Dockery, and your staff, and the ACSD committee, and Judy Faribaugh, and the work, Scott Campbell. Thank you to them. My congratulations to Robinson, my home school, for state champs in wrestling, and the boys swim and dive team. Absolutely terrific. We are the home of champions, Robinson Rams. I got sad news from Mr. Moon just before the meeting that our West Springfield girls battled it out with Richmond, and they just went down swinging and unfortunately lost at the end. But Herculean effort on your part. I missed my Read Across Americas due to snow, so Read Across Springfield, invite me. I'll come and read at any time. And I look forward to revisiting some of those schools that I didn't have the opportunity to see. And then, importantly, next Tuesday, I get to have my third student town hall at Lake Braddock, and Miss McLaughlin is going to be joining as well, and we look very much forward to it. I've said that that's probably the singular best thing that I've done since I got on the school board, is giving an immediate access of students to have their voice heard. And I have very much appreciated that, and those have been tremendously helpful to me in working forward with policy decisions and thoughts of including the student voice in all of the decisions that we make on your behalf.
Like my colleagues, my heart goes out to the Woodson community in light of the recent tragedies, and I do want to say how much I appreciate the very quick turnaround that Dr. Garza and Dr. Dockery and Dr. Panarelli did for bringing together an amazing community conversation last night. It was, as someone said, I think Ms. McLaughlin said, a standing room only crowd, and filled with parents, teachers, community partners. There were a long list of people who set aside whatever else they were doing to come and be there last night. After the official presentation, some of us went into the cafeteria and I could hear more and was part of more conversations, very thoughtful conversations. And this is just the beginning. There's more for us to do, but that was a good start. So I appreciate all the very quick work and forceful action on that. The special ed conference was terrific. It just keeps getting bigger and better. So I was pleased to be there as well for that excellent conference. I also was pleased to go to the Braddock listening tour, and I think I have not been to as many as Mr. Velkoff and Mr. McElveen were, but I did make it to about five of the 9 districts, and it's very interesting as a district board member to go to the different areas and to see the slightly different, some of the same themes, but some differences. So I think it was an excellent community outreach that across the county. So that really was top notch. So thank you, Dr. Garza, for initiating that and for completing it, despite all the snow days and some of the complications. I did attend the Just World Festival at Annandale High School last Friday afternoon, and it was stunning to see the amount of energy and commitment on the part of young people. There was booth after booth after booth of activities of our students getting so involved, from everything from abusive relationships to animal protection to genocide, international issues. So it was wonderful to see how many different issues our students have taken on. So I was pleased to be there for that. Was very happy to be in attendance at Falls Church High School Heritage Night that same evening, and to listen to our colleague, Mr. McElveen, who did the keynote speech, and he was very, very well received. Read Across America, I was able to go to Belvedere Elementary School and read to kindergartners and first graders, which was very sweet, and they were very well behaved and very attentive, and had good comments to make on the Dr. Seuss book that I read. And I will be at Glen Forest Elementary School tomorrow, and I very much look forward to that. It's one of the more fun things to do. Last but not least, I will be holding a budget town hall meeting next Tuesday, March 11th, 7 o'clock at Stewart High School. I hope everyone in Mason District or beyond, feel free to attend, will come. Mrs. Quinn is going to be presenting information about our budget and the budget situation, and I look forward to people attending and having a conversation there. Prior to it, I'll be meeting with Mason District PTA presidents, and I look forward to that conversation as well.
Again, as everybody else, thank you so much for all of those who were at Woodson, and we all encircle our Woodson community and extend our deepest sympathy. But again, thank you to all of those who very quickly came and are there to help our students and our teachers and our families. I would like to thank McLean High School and Safe Community Coalition. They did a wonderful evening on the youth risk survey, talking about stress and mental health issues. It was very well attended, and was a very interesting discussion. Dee Dee Baylor presented the youth risk survey, Wilma Bowers, who is the PTSA president, and of course Ellen Riley, who I just think she's fabulous. And we included the elementary and the middle school as well to talk about how do we help students make healthy choices? How do we support them? How do we help kids through the high school stress areas? But I really commend them for their proactive discussion and very well attended and lively discussion. I, too, want to thank the Board of Supervisors for allowing us to continue the conversation on our school needs. And I particularly want to thank Supervisor John Faust. Thank you, John. I know we all have tough decisions ahead, but we really do appreciate the continuation of this dialogue. It's very important to us. Special Ed Conference was great, and I really enjoyed Ellen Galinsky, and I really look forward to her presentation. I think we've all read the book, and in fact, I've been lending the book out, so that was great. And thank you, Hutchison. I got to do Read Across America with their students, and it was lots of fun. I will be going out to a couple of other schools that actually were not snowed out, and I will be visiting next week Colvin Run and Herndon High School to talk about the budgets. The Drainsville budget town halls, unfortunately, are on school board meeting nights. So, but I know Supervisor John Faust will do an excellent job in presenting the challenges that lie ahead of us. So, thank you.
Okay, with that, the meeting is adjourned.